Good evening. It's Monday, July 24th, 2023, and this is a meeting of the Southborough Planning Board. The Planning Board is now in session. The first item on the agenda is appointment to the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Yes, so at the June 27th Planning Board meeting, the Planning Board had appointed Catherine McKee. Unfortunately, she didn't get sworn in time, so she asked to be reappointed this evening. And if you need the letter to read, it's a one-year term that will expire June 30th. So that was the original letter we wrote.
So the motion is to appoint Catherine McKee to the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor. Luttrell, yes.
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brascio, yes.
The next item is the Deed Research Subcommittee. Appoint Frederica Gillespie. I think a similar thing. She didn't get sworn in time.
Correct. Same thing happened, and it is the term of the member, it's a one-year term, expires June 30th, 2024.
So the motion is to appoint Frederica Gillespie to the Deed Research Subcommittee.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor. Luttrell, yes.
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brascio, yes.
Next item on the agenda is a discussion item, MBTA Communities Update on Actions. I want to thank Ms. Houlihan for working with Colleen to put together an education plan. Do you want to take us through your good work, Marnie?
Sure. So prior to this evening, the discussion was around getting information out to the community about the MBTA Communities Act, which is the state law that is requiring communities along the MBTA commuter rail to dedicate 50 acres to by-right housing, multi-use housing. So what is important is for us to get this to the town vote at town meeting next year. And we thought, in order to do that, putting a strategy in place as to what is the plan so that we didn't kind of throw a bunch of tactics at this and just really had a plan moving forward. So on the next slide, Karina, is really just the timeline that we put together. And so there's kind of bolded things under each of the blue: plan, inform, develop, communicate. And so in the month of July, it's really about planning what it is that we would like to do for the overview of the MBTA plan. And really right now it's communications and messaging. It's being able to inform and educate the town about the MBTA Communities Act, the requirement as a community that we have an MBTA through, that we have to have 50 acres dedicated. And the town meeting is requested to vote positive at this, so we approve it. We have 8 months to do that, or around 9 months to be able to do that. So what this timeline really fleshes out is the plan. So Colleen Stansfield and I will be working together to put together some of the communication and messaging, leveraging our consultant that we have through the grants to be able to do just that, inform the communities. And so we have basically put a plan together for each segment quarter. We're in quarter 3, then quarter 4 will be to kind of collaborate and develop the plan. So leveraging the planning board to refine the work that we'll be doing through workshops with the community in November and December, so that in January we can go to public open meetings and have informed, byway communication with the town and the public to be able to address anything in the bylaw that people would like to know about. And then we would take it to the town vote in March. So I don't want to belabor this. I think the next slide, Karina, just shares a little bit of what Q3 is, which July through September. Our internal focus is really on the communication and messaging, as I mentioned. And external is to educate. So explain what the MBTA Communities Law is and what it is not. what is in our town's control and what is in the state's control. And then we want to let the town know that we are opening opportunities for collaboration. We'll be putting 3 workshops out there during the Q4, which is October through December. We'll probably focus these in October, where the town can come and help us identify those 50 acres. We have a good idea, but we would like to get a butters in interest. This primarily affects the Route 9 South community because it has to be within, it's technically within a half mile of the commuter rail, but they're giving us some liberties because we really don't have a lot of property. A lot of it is on the Hopkinton line. So with that, I don't know if the planning board or the public has any questions, but that is the plan, and there will be some communications and outbound marketing mail that most of the town will receive in the coming months.
Thank you very much, Ms. Houlihan. Any comment, Mr. Stein?
Great job, Marnie. Looking forward to learning more. Thank you.
Ms. DeMaria?
Thank you, Marnie. I know Colleen had also started to do a lot of work, and it's really great to have you guys collaborating on this. It's really nice to see the structure, and I'm looking forward to learning as well. Thank you.
Ms. Braccio?
Same here. Thank you, Marnie, for spearheading this with Colleen. I think this is really important, and it's great to actually see a plan start to come together, so thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Marnie. This is very good. It's good to have an action plan so we know where we're going instead of having 1,000 balls up in the air all at the same time. So appreciate it. Thank you. Does anyone in the audience have any comment on this? Anyone in Zoom land?
We currently have 5 attendees, no hands raised.
Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item. It's a discussion, 9 Jericho Hill Road, 2-family conversion. Karina?
So the planning department received notification from the zoning board of appeals business administrator that they had received an application for a special permit for a single-family to 2-family conversion, which is a special permit that's required. And part of that is, process is that the applicant comes before the planning board for a report to the ZBA during their public hearing timeframe. Here representing the property owner is Michael Bartolini with Bartolini Properties, right? They submitted an application, a copy of what they submit to the ZBA, and it included everything that's in that. It's very informative and all. And the plan was a little bit difficult to read, and it didn't show the garage on there. So initially, we thought that it was the garage was the additional building that's proposed there. So Michael prepared a color rendering to better identify what's on the lot. And there is an existing house that has been there for more than 2 years. The lot is at least 15,000 square feet. However, there is a Part 3 to the code, 174-9, G, I think it is. Let me tell you.
Yes.
Yeah, G3, which I have to point out, it says that not more than the required minimum exterior alterations have been or will be made to the one-family house and to any accessory buildings, and the site plan of the lot and floor plans of the dwelling thereon must be filed with the building inspector prior to the application to the Board of Appeals. So that's why I was telling you it's important that you have to file this with the building commissioner too, because the code says that, as opposed to just through the ZBA, so that he can opine if there's any other permits that you might need at the same time, or give you any guidance on what may or may not be allowed. And the key part here is that in Part 3, minimum exterior alterations, There's a definition for that in the zoning code, and it says that alterations, minimum exterior, external alterations limited to those necessary to comply with applicable building, fire, or health codes, and not enlarging the usable area of a building or changing its character. So those are the facts. It does appear that you're adding or enlarging, or proposing an addition. So there's a little bit of a concern there. So I did speak with the building commissioner, and and with Lara Davis, who's the business administrator for the ZBA, to let her know this. And the building commissioner also had a consensus with me that this might be an issue, but that Michael could still proceed to the ZBA with his request, and depending on, what code allows, if the ZBA could allow it or not. But that doesn't preclude the fact that the planning board can opine, and we prepare a memo to recommend to the ZBA if you support this or not, based on the code. So at that, Michael, you can,
Sure.
if
Mike
you're ready.
Bartolini, 9, is this on?
Can you hear Michael?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike Bartolini, 9 McNeil Drive. Yeah, so as you can see, everything lines up. It's over 2 years in existence. It is on a lot that's more than 15,000 square feet. It meets all the criteria that it's supposed to meet. We do actually believe that we do meet the minimum exterior alterations. In that definition, it does state that external alterations are limited to those necessary to comply with applicable building, fire, or health codes. So with us tonight is the Johnson family, so David and his daughter Cheryl. And the Johnson family currently has an illness in the family, and the future use of this particular addition would be for the access of a wheelchair. So the current house can't meet the standards to use a wheelchair, get around, move around, and have handicap access. So to fulfill these standards, the expansion is necessary. And also with that comes the necessity to change and comply with the health codes. So the single-family house is going to move from a 3-bedroom house to a 2-bedroom, and to comply with the health code of maintaining a 3-bedroom septic system. So we're only expanding what is necessary to expand based upon the needs of the applicant, which by that definition is allowed. Would also like to point out that we have done this in the past, and the town has done this in the past numerous times. I believe this would be the 6th time that my family has been in front of you guys for this, and it's always been met favorably, so not sure exactly what changed, but we're just trying to come forward with you and give you an honest assessment of what is trying to be accomplished here. But we do feel we meet that criteria. I think so. And I didn't know Colleen was sick, so I sent her pictures this morning. I just emailed them to you if you want pictures of the house. I don't know if that's necessary or not. The exterior of the house is basically going to maintain the same character of what's currently there.
Mr. Stein?
So if you could just go back a second.
Sure.
The existing single-family home is a 2-bedroom?
Is a 3-bedroom house currently.
Okay.
So in order to meet the needs of the Johnsons for wheelchair access, it's almost impossible to do in the existing house. So to meet their needs, to comply with the health code, we are going to decrease the single-family house from 3-bed to a 2-bed and move the other bedroom. The third bedroom's going to move to that new section.
For the septic?
Correct.
Okay, how are you going to do that?
You can just tie in. So it's basically.
No, that part I understand. I meant reducing the number of bedrooms.
So I've talked to the Board of Health already. They're aware of what we're doing. I don't have a letter yet, but he is aware of the decreasing of the 3 to 2 and then moving the 1 bedroom over. So they're going to relinquish a bedroom from the main house.
Okay, so you still have to go in front of the Board of Health?
No, I think all he has to do is write me a letter, which
Okay.
hasn't been done yet, but I have a verbal okay. And they're very much aware of what we're doing.
Okay. I mean, I'm kind of curious about reducing the number of bedrooms, but in general, I would be in support of the type of housing that's being created, because we don't have enough, and I'm also the Shopsy rep on the planning board. I think it would be really not in the best interest of the town, and from just in my opinion, to oppose this on the basis that we need more of the small, affordable housing stock. So I hope the rest of the board will take that into consideration. I guess that's all I have for now. Thanks.
Ms. Houlihan?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for coming and thanks for explaining the situation. So my only curiosity was just around the renderings that were submitted to the town around, or the planning board around just ADA, if it's wheelchair on the external portion, because I would have never actually understood that there was an illness based on what we were supplied.
Right. So the interior of the house is made so that we can make for wheelchair access. Mr. Johnson has asked that we do the exterior, or he will do the exterior at a later date, because they aren't at that point as of yet, but they will be getting to that point. So the interior of the house will be made with wider doors. It's going to be like a slide-in shower, that kind of stuff.
I don't have any other questions, and Mr. Stein, I agree with you. I think the town is in need of support of these type of houses, and I will be in support of this.
I'm trying to get your pictures, but they're all upside down.
Sorry.
Mr. Murray?
Hi, thank you for coming in. What is the size of the addition in relation to the primary dwelling?
So the addition is 560 square feet. I want to say the single-family home is it 17?
83 built the house.
I think it was around 1,700 square feet, I think. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Thanks. I mean, I just want to say I support it as well. It might be interesting for the public to know that the Select Board are interested in a accessory dwelling unit by right bylaw that's kind of spearheaded by the chairman, Andrew Dennington. On the zoning board, Doris Cahill is providing some information, and from the planning board, I'm providing some information to hopefully end up in a warrant article next spring. And the idea of it is that it would be with some parameters. It would be a by right. So you wouldn't have to kind of go through all these boards just to make these accommodations. I think what you're doing is very, very nice. I also support that we need more housing like this. So thank you for coming in. I support it.
Ms. Braccio?
Thank you. Thank you for coming in, and I as well agree that this presents an opportunity for the future for the town as well, and there's certainly a compelling need to get this done, and I would be very, very supportive of it and anything we could do to help that along. Thank you.
Thank you. So the addition would go basically off the end of that deck there. So right where that kind of hump is. And it would be similar style.
So let me ask, while she's getting those pictures up. So the interior of the addition is all ADA accessible?
So what we have is, we've made it wide enough so that essentially everything on the interior, the doors, door jambs, everything's gonna be wide enough to accommodate wheelchairs.
And lower counters in the kitchen and,
That will be up to Mr. Johnson.
okay. And you're saying that ADA accessibility is a health code?
No, what I'm saying is the requirement of the Johnsons requires us to comply with the current health code bylaw. So we have to, essentially, the standards that he needs to meet on the interior of the house can't be met in the single-family home. So we needed to make the expansion. To make that expansion, we had to comply with the necessary health codes per the definition of the exterior alterations. So we had to comply with the septic health code to make that happen.
Oh, okay. All right. So I think the intention, right or wrong, but it's our bylaw, and it's what the legislative body voted, is that the single-family home doesn't change any, and it specifically calls out not enlarging the area. So I'm trying to get past that because I think this is a great project. I just think it's in the wrong order. I think that if you build the addition, then it's part of the single-family home and it's not being enlarged when you come for the special permit.
Right, so, I mean, the way I've always seen it done, and the way I feel like the board has done it in the past, the bylaw is always intended to be more to keep within the characteristics of the neighborhood, the character of the single-family home. Again, this body has given a positive review of these multiple times in the past. I know we've done expansions multiple times, and this board has given us a favorable review. Also, the bylaw is kind of muddled, so I'd agree with you, but like if you look in accessory apartments, so if you look under the definition of accessory, it literally says a subsidiary dwelling unit created within or as an extension to a single-family dwelling. So it says one thing in one hand and the other in somewhere else. So it's been our experience, and why we went through this process, was that this board in the past has always viewed that bylaw this way, and that's why we went this direction. So we feel we have a valid reason as to why we meet that third portion of the bylaw. But also, there has been precedent set by both planning and ZBA that these have been allowed in the past.
Okay, I only remember one when I was on the board, and that was on Breakneck Hill, Turnpike
did.
Road.
2 for us on Flag,
And those were additions?
yes. And then we have 4 on Flag that were additions. Breakneck's the only one that was actually held within the building. And then I know of some on Ladisquama, I know of some on School Street. It's been done quite a few times. This is not something that we're bringing up for the first time.
Yeah, I think it's a great project, and as, I agree with the rest of the board, it's a badly needed housing type in town. But that would be my only caution. So we just report to the ZBA.
So you would take a vote to be in support or not support, and then any conditions or sorry. You'd need to vote to support or not support, or to provide the report, and then if you had any comments or conditions that we can add to the letter. So it says one-page memo. We did a draft on the Dropbox, basically describes the project, and if you're in support of it, and then just identify anything special you want to say, any condition.
So it appears I'm not a minority that has any pause on this, so does the board just want to write a letter that we're in support and find it to be?
So has everybody had a chance to review this draft in the Dropbox? Okay. So, do you mind if I made the motion?
Yeah, just be careful, there's a couple typos in that draft, but it's it's like minuscule, it's like administrative we can fix. It refers to the wrong residence. I think it says residence, it says either residence B, and this is residence B.
Yeah.
So that letter just says accidentally residence
Could you
A.
put the letter up? 'Cause
I can't.
didn't actually get to see.
Let me look. I'll put it up right now. Hold on.
Which district is it?
Resby?
Residence B.
That's correct, isn't it, Resby?
I thought it was A, but you may be correct.
The letter, it's
It's Res A. The letter
Oh, it's
says Res
Res A.
B. So let me just share the screen. So this is our standard letter customized for this particular location at 9 Jericho Hill Road.
Mr. Stein?
So the motion is for the planning board to approve the submission of this draft letter of recommendation and support of 9 Jericho Hill Road two-family conversion as amended.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brascio, yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a discussion item, Public Works Planning Board. And the reason this is on the agenda is that Select Board member Al Hamilton was charged to write a warrant article for annual town meeting to abolish the Public Works Planning Board. So as appointing authorities, I wanted to see what the board thought of that, if they thought that the board should comment or if had any opinion on that. And I also invited the town moderator, Mr. Semino, to join our discussion because he is also an appointing authority of the Public Works Planning Board. Mr. Stein?
Well, I guess my first question, since we have an appointee here on our board, would be, Ms. Maria, would you like to, go into what's going on and what your position is on it, please?
Yeah, I'll just briefly mention, because I'd like to, hear from this board, and Mr. Semino also. So I think everybody understands that the Public Works Planning Board has not recently been meeting. There's been some open meeting law violations of meeting minutes, et cetera, but just in general, there's a reluctance to meet unless the Select Board give a specific topic for that board to meet. It's really, this Public Works Planning Board, in my opinion, and speaking with Mr. Semino and others around town who served on that board, has always had some difficulties. And it seems like right now we're in a very difficult spot, let's just say. But this is really not about a chairman that doesn't wish to meet. This is really about, I think, how we want to consider some of the items that have traditionally been brought to Public Works Planning Board in the past and what we want to do as a town. I've taken a look at other towns. There's, many towns roll their Public Works Planning Board into, with other boards. They'll combine it, for example, with, not just solid waste committees, but also sustainability committee. They might do tree warden, they might do other things. And there's certainly a lot of ideas, but I think this idea is to just completely blow it up and just dissolve it. I think the main issue is there's a couple of things. Remaining on the books from a long, long time ago is a bylaw for a solid waste committee, which is 3 appointments by the moderator, and it probably predates the Public Works Planning Board. And I think Mr. Semino and I talked about, how did this ever come to be? And that's something on the books that the town meeting voted on back in the 60s, and it was amended at some time in the 70s. But, that sort of predates the formation of the DPW and the Public Works Planning Board. And more now, other towns have a more modern approach to, interacting more with their DPW staff. So it could be, for example, a member of the public wants to find out whether they can get a truck exclusion on their road. Where do they go? They go to the town engineer. Town engineer brings it to the Public Works Planning Board, and there might hear from the public on that. Something having to do with our water supply and water storage and water tanks, and the Hopkinton water issue is another example of something that we would have expected to go to Public Works Planning Board. And in general, the feeling, I think, from me and others who have expressed themselves at town, at various town meetings, is that we need more of we need to hear more from the public. And in fact, as part of the Master Plan Implementation Committee, that's a theme that we want to do more interacting with the public and get people more involved. So my thinking is, we may want to abolish or get rid of this Public Works Planning Board, but it really needs to be replaced by something else. And so that's my major concern. There is one other thing, that I used to be on the Recycling Committee way back when that turned into the Green Technology Committee. And Mr. Semino was on the board at that time and remembers that Green Technology Committee dissolved because of really lack of interest, but it was rolled into the Public Works Planning Board. This was back in 2016. So I think we can't forget about these threads, that there's some things that are really, really important. And I think hearing from the public is also very important. For master plan, in the open house survey, sustainability and also access to, having a government that's more accessible came up pretty high in terms of how the town wants to, interact with its leaders. So I think that getting rid of a committee and not replacing it with anything is really a step in the wrong direction. I can think of a couple things to replace it with, one being sustainability and solid waste, and some, maybe there's other ideas, but I think that, this board, I think, should have a say together with the moderator to kind of shape how this will go. Otherwise, I am afraid that we'll just get rid of it altogether, and we'll have even less visibility and transparency in our town government. Thanks.
Having heard from Mr. Murray, do you have any further comment, Mr. Stein?
So I support your position. Is our agenda item then to, submit some sort of recommendation to Select Board?
If the board was to have a discussion, if that's what the outcome is, I was hoping, Mr. Semino, would you like to join our conversation?
Right, because the first thing that popped into my mind is there a working group actually with Mr. Hamilton on it? Or is this just a concept that may happen?
I have no idea.
As far as I know, he was charged to write a bylaw to come to town meeting. There is no
But
working
there has
group.
been no working group or a subcommittee formed.
No.
Okay.
And it's his, from what he said, his desire to reduce the number of boards and committees in town. So although there were some on the board that were, vacillating on whether it should be replaced with something, it's not, Mr. Hamilton does not believe it should be. Ms. Houlihan?
Thank you. Thanks, Debbie, for, one, being our appointee to the Public Works Planning Board. It's unfortunate that it hasn't met. I think there are challenges with this planning board committee, or Public Works Planning Board. And I think that something should remain, because there are so many issues in the past that have not been really clear or transparent to the public. I think the one, top of mind would have been like the St. Mark's debacle. And I think having other people have an opportunity to put in opinion is really important, because as we've heard, select boards, public comment is so short and they don't often have to address anything. And so to have an opportunity where the public has interaction and opinion and can speak and be heard, I think that needs to be supported. So I think it's a little rash to abolish something without actually doing diligence and understanding the pain points, the threads that do come out of that. And if you do abolish something, what happens? What haven't we thought about? What are the implications of that change? So I am in support of you, Debbie, in that saying that it should be replaced by something. But I think it's too rapid to be able to put this up for town warrant now, unless there is some team of people evaluating this versus just one individual writing a bylaw. Thank you.
Ms. Brochu?
Thank you. I have a few comments on this one. Whether change is needed or not, I think any discussion is premature without having a conversation with the appointing authorities. I'm a little concerned about that, to start with. And it's great the select board can do what they would like to do. I mean, I used to sit there. But I think in the spirit of collaboration, I would like to have had a conversation before somebody was appointed to rewrite something that there was purview under this board. Also, I think one of the things I've envisioned with the Public Works Planning Board is, I know we have a new superintendent that came on, is we've talked a lot about these road projects that come up. And I think oversight, as you said, Ms. Houlihan, oversight is a big key as we move forward. And I think there's an opportunity here to, capital kind of is reviewing projects now. It's really not the purview of capital. It should be something within a structure of the DPW that should be reviewing some of these ongoing projects that are going to be coming up in the future. I envision the Public Works Planning Board to do that. When I look at the legislation, I think it's broad enough as far as a charge goes that we can change what is specifically there. It just says a new 5-member Public Works Planning Board would be appointed by the moderator and planning board for 3 years to advise the select persons in planning, managing, and financing. I think that is so broad that maybe what we need to do is to come up with some structure within that we can utilize what we have instead of ending something and creating something. And again, bringing more confusion to town meeting, because people come to town meeting usually for a very focused item or something very focused. I think there's going to be a lot of confusion on why we're doing it this way. So I think there's an opportunity here. I don't know specifically what that opportunity is, but I commend a discussion starting on this. But I think that the moderator and the planning board need to be involved in those discussions as well, and what our expectation is. So I guess that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. The last I heard, and I think it was when you, Mr. Semino, and the chair of the Public Works Planning Board was before the selectmen, that they were going to hold off on doing anything until the new Public Works DPW director started, and then discuss with him how best they could be utilized. So I'm a little concerned that they're discussing abolishing right as he's getting started, because I think there is a benefit to the DPW, and some of these big public works projects can be publicly vetted, so there's not, outrage when all of a sudden backhoes show up and trees start coming down. And I don't think, it's not, my opinion is they're not overseeing the DPW. It's just kind of a PR arm, a public outreach, so people kind of know some of the things that are going on at the DPW. Mr. Semino.
So, did you, I don't know if I understood you at the beginning, Madam Chair, did Mr. Hamilton reach out to you, say, hey, I'm working on this and want to let you know, or?
No, I was at a select board meeting.
Okay. So I think historically there's been a lot of confusion about the purpose and execution by the PWPB, the Public Works Planning Board. I do agree with Ms. Brascio that the charge is very broad. One thing that's very clear in the charge, though, is that board exists to assist and advise the select board. So when people started to raise questions about how it was going about its business, my refrain all along was, what does the select board think about this? It sounds like at the end of the day, what they think about it is they don't want it anymore. They don't need it, or they think it's run its course. Obviously, there's some disagreement with that among all of you. I don't have and not knowing how what the agenda item was going to entail tonight, I don't have an opinion to share on that specifically. I do trust the select board to give it its due consideration and be thoughtful about it, so that either it's not dissolved willy-nilly, or if it is, there's consideration for whether it ought to be replaced by something else, or some other method or mode of shining a spotlight a little more on what's going on at DPW. And at the end of the day, DPW is reports and is subject to the oversight of the select board. I do trust them to be thoughtful about that. And as an appointing authority, I don't have a specific opinion one way or the other about where that ought to come out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone in the public have any comment on this? Mr. Litt?
Also, just for the record, there are several attendees, no hands raised in the Zoom room.
So, Tim Litt, Woodland Road. I do have somewhat of an opinion on this. The Public Works Planning Board, as you've noted, is the result of a special act of the legislature, and its structure and its mission is controlled by that. That same special act is the one that took the office of tree warden and turned it into the responsibility of the select board, which I think everyone agrees is not particularly efficient or helpful. So my thought on this is that if one goes to the legislature to amend the special act, one should take care of everything possible in the one request, because it's expensive to get our legislators to do something, and of course that also requires an act of town meeting to authorize the select board to go to the legislature to make things happen. So my 2 cents on where it ought to come out is that first, the tree warden ought to be reestablished as an appointed, office because, the current situation doesn't work. And I'm actually in favor of removing the Public Works Planning Board from the state, act and replacing it with a suitable bylaw committee that the town has control over and the town can modify from time to time without the unwieldiness of having to go through the whole special act process. So that's where I am on this. I will say that in part because of the confusion, and I think in part because of the personalities, the Public Works Planning Board has not been particularly effective or active in the past few years, and it's led to a lot of frustration. So I agree with the planning board comments that you shouldn't just get rid of it, but I think the replacement shouldn't be coming from the legislature. The replacement, should be a bylaw committee that is created with some thought.
So do we know that there can be no amendments to that without going to the legislature?
It is a special act, and you can't change the wording of it without the legislature taking action.
Okay.
It's a special act, I think, chapter 447 of 91.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the board on this? Do you think we should write a letter? Or?
So, yeah, I think that, my position would be that we support our appointee, who's a board member, and submit the recommendation to the select board that the board, the Public Works Planning Board, that is, be abolished on the condition of the replacement with a, what was the wording? Well, you're a bylaw committee? Okay. I don't know if that requires a motion or if we can just come to a consensus. I believe we can just come to a consensus that that's the message we want to convey without a formal vote.
Would we be asking the select board to form a committee, which I think is what Mr. Hamilton did not want, to discuss what replacement might look like, or this business about the tree warden, where that might end up?
Well, I think that our other option is to take no action.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do?
Well,
Mr. Stein, do you mean this board to take no action
Correct.
tonight? Or
That's what I mean.
planning- Was this the select board? Okay.
oh, no, I think, yeah, thank you for that clarification, Mr. Semino. I think, yes, we should take some action. I think, together with the moderator, I think we're vested in this. We have the best interest of the town at heart, and, it could be very detrimental just to get rid of it without any kind of
Right.
replacement. I do think, though, I do think there should be more than a letter. I think there should be a focused group, or whatever you want to call it, because there are some of these strings that I think have to be taken into consideration.
The problem is we don't have the authority to form that group.
Right.
So what the purpose, as I see it, of this agenda item is to submit a recommendation to select board.
Yeah.
We could offer to work with the select board
Yeah,
to,
we should put that in the record.
Yeah, I would be 100% behind that. I think this needs to be a collaborative effort, as we move forward with this and move forward to town meeting. I think town meeting would give great deference to that.
Madam Chair. So again, just to be clear from my perspective, I'm not completely aligned with what I am hearing is the consensus up front. I don't oppose the consensus that I'm hearing, but I wouldn't add my name to the recommendation that, what I said a few minutes ago is that I trust the select board to be thoughtful about this. And in the universe of possibilities in terms of taking public input, seeking, taking, listening with regard to the work of the DPW, anywhere from nothing to, a permanent, a special act committee, obviously is sort of the spectrum. And wherever the select board comes out on that, I trust them to be thoughtful about that. And so I don't have a particular thought or recommendation to join in on.
Understood.
Okay.
We won't name drop you.
Now, if there is, by the way, if the select board takes you up on working with them, and they want me to be involved in that, I'm happy to be involved in it. I'm not opposed to any of this. I don't have an affirmative direction that I assume ought to be taken.
Okay.
We have Patricia Burns Fiore in the attendee with her hand raised.
Okay.
Patricia, can you hear me?
Sorry, I always forget that unmute thing.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I apologize. I stepped into this a couple of minutes late because I am out of town. But,
Could you just introduce yourself?
oh, I'm sorry. Patricia Burns Fiore, 10 Winter Street. It sounds like you're interested in changing this from the kind of committee it is to potentially a standing committee, more based on the fact that it is an ineffectual seated committee. Is that kind of correct? I mean, if that committee was seated with people that didn't obstruct what they're supposed to be doing and didn't, go against state law for open meeting charges, perhaps we would be seeing a viable committee that could do something, and then y'all would probably be okay with it, right? So I question the concept of changing it. If it's going to solve the problem and be able to reallocate how people are seated on this committee and unseated from this committee in order to make it effectual, then maybe that is the way to go, is to make it a standing committee.
Well, it would be under the control of the town and not the state, so we could write a more effective charge, number one, which it's pretty broad now.
So you could zero in on what the charge is that you want him to do. But the way I understand this, in having looked at this particular committee for a number of months, is that they need, it's kind of there sitting, waiting for direction from the select board, because they are seated at the pleasure of the select board. And I know Mr. Semino said that, he kind of, and in my conversation directly with him, he said that he was not aware at the time that the select board was unhappy with that committee. The select board then called him and the committee chair into a select board meeting and specifically said, you need to meet, you need to call a meeting, you need to follow the rules of open meeting law. And the chair of that committee chose not to. So I understand. If I am all on board. If you think that this is going to create a more effective committee by narrowing that objective of what that committee should do, and the way to do that is to have it as a standing committee under the direction of the select board, I'm all for it. I think that there is a viable reason for having that kind of a committee, because the DPW is such a large use of our taxpayer funds. It controls a huge portion of the budget. It controls a huge portion of the work that is done in this town. And there is a lot of input that should go into that. And I can see this as being a very viable, vital committee. I personally think that some of the members of that are not the appropriate people. So however, the best way is to resolve that. I'm all behind it, but I would hate to see that committee go away so that there is not that additional avenue of input for the kinds of things that the DPW does, the money that they control, and the projects that they oversee in the town.
Thank you. I think we're in agreement.
you.
We're just writing a letter.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you.
Look, I'm not here to get into the history. There's a lot of people behind me that are here for other things. But I came to the select board with Mr. Boland at my initiative after hearing from Ms. DeMaria and Ms. Houlihan and their concerns about this. I did speak with Ms. Burns-Fiore directly. I brought Mr. Boland to the select board to hear their, what they had to say about their satisfaction or not with the Public Works Planning Board. The outcome of that over a period of, months at this point is they want to dissolve it. Okay? So that process has taken place. The select board hasn't chosen to name or identify individual members, et cetera. Ms. Burns-Fiore is correct that, that the Public Works Planning Board has been found in violation of the open meeting law, et cetera, failing to publish minutes timely, et cetera. They haven't met. Select board asked them to meet, et cetera. The bottom line being the select board is the final arbiter of whether or not the Public Works Planning Board is doing their job. And we are here because they have decided that in that role, they would like to see it dissolved. That may or may not be the best outcome, but that is the correct history. So I apologize to everybody in the room, but I felt I needed
Thank
to
you.
take a couple minutes to
Yep,
verify
thank you.
that.
We have another hand in the audience. Patricia, are you all set?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to elevate Jesse Wall. Could you please unmute yourself, or do I do that? There we go.
Hello, my name is Jesse Wall. I would just like first off say,
what's
that bitch
your address,
Patricia
Jesse?
was so fucking annoying, man. I mean, Jesus. But anyway, I would just like to say
Excuse
that.
me, Mr. Wall. Mr.
Yes?
Wall, you cannot speak with that language.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm
You
so
cannot
sorry.
be swearing in the forum here. It's not appropriate. All right, so if you could please contain yourself. And
I'll
then,
try my best. I'll try my best.
And what is your address?
402 Pine Street, or also because it's like a slash in between. Drag on my nuts across your chin. But anyway, don't say oh.
Can you get rid of him, please?
yes. Sorry. He looked like he was real. I don't know how you can tell.
You can't.
Okay, he's gone.
That's the first time. I've heard other towns this has happened constantly. So.
I'm not aware we have a Pine Street in town.
We don't.
Yeah.
So, write a letter to the select board, saying that we would offer to work with them to work on a bylaw to abolish and replace it with the bylaw committee. Do we want to add what we see as a benefit of that, what that bylaw committee could be? Okay.
Would you mind, Madam Chair, if I worked with you on the letter?
Sure. Is everyone okay with that?
Yep.
And so we're all in consensus to do that?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Mr.
Welcome.
Semino.
Thank you.
We don't have any other hands raised at this moment. sorry.
The next item on the agenda is also a discussion item. St. Mark's stone wall and tree mitigation. A couple meetings ago, we had a discussion on how the plan for the park is, the select board has decided not to come before the planning board for site plan review, which was how we were going to ensure that our mitigation was followed through on. At that meeting, though, town council gave assurance that the select board would bring the park plan to the planning board informally for our opinion, but I haven't heard anything on that, and I haven't heard the select board discuss that. So my question to the board is, should I reach out to the select board chair and see when that is going to happen, or should we write another letter as a board, or let it go? My concern is that the mitigation hasn't been met, neither the trees nor the stone wall on the park plan.
I'm not sure if it's worthwhile for us to pursue that. I mean, we really aired this out with Mr. Dennington in attendance. And, it's very clear that they're not going to, fulfill the agreement that was made. So I'm not sure how it makes sense to belabor that point. That's my position on it.
Ms. Houlihan?
Yeah, I mean, I take a slightly different slant. Town meeting, for those people who attended, they were presented a plan that the select board would come to planning board with the plan. So the town was told this. Select board has decided that they don't need the planning board's input with town council advice, so they don't have to come here. So we are of the opinion that they should. They damaged many trees and took down a scenic stone wall in the St. Mark's Triangle. And there's no mitigation for that. There's no mitigation. There's now a promise, an empty promise to the town. So I personally feel that we push the envelope yet again. Whether or not there's any feedback from the select board, I think it should be known that the planning board is here for the town. We support the town. We listen to the town. We have open communications for you. That's why we're here, and we are here to be aligned cross-functionally. We're here to collaborate. I can't think that's true of my select board, and I hope that some of the people hearing me today feel a little bit outraged, because you should be. So I am outraged. I think we push the envelope, and whether or not we get any response, we just sit and wait.
How would you like the envelope pushed, Marty?
Perhaps you should come back
Sorry,
to
that
me
was
and
a
let me
loaded
take a deep
question.
breath before I answer that.
Mr. Maria?
So I actually think these are two issues, and maybe I'm getting them conflated. So one of them is, as town planners, I think that we should be involved in planning this park. So if there's a letter to be written, I'd like to go on file as saying, yeah, we disagree with town council. Remember, council is advising, and I know he's advising select board, but he should be advising this board as well. But we can take that under advisement, and I completely disagree. We should have gotten a copy of the park plans for site plan approval. And I feel strongly we should put something in writing to that effect. And remember, we don't always take council advice. I guess select board does, but, okay. And then the second issue has to do with the trees and stone walls, which I feel like that's a completely separate matter and it falls into our purview. And I just wanted to let everybody know that in the Dropbox, I put a sort of a mock-up of the plan that Mr. Dennington, you know, we left in a sour place. This is sort of the problem. It's sort of a question and answer, and we didn't get the answer, really. At the last meeting with Mr. Dennington, he was suggesting that there were already stone walls and I don't know, stone walls to be replaced on the park plan that were part of, I think, a 2021 plan, but that actually predates the planning board's letter to them about removing the stone wall, and even the consolidated hearings that we've had on the stone wall, where the select board indicated that they would replace that stone wall. So he seemed to indicate that they already got it taken care of in that older plan. So I dug out that older plan. I think it's 2021, I believe, is the plan. And I believe what he's referring to is taking a non-scenic stone wall and moving it to St. Mark Street, okay, and then taking, which is a scenic road, and then taking the scenic stone wall and moving it to a non-scenic road. And that's totally unacceptable. We're trying to keep our stone walls on our scenic roads. So I think that the notion that we're just going to revert back to this old plan and say, oh yeah, you know, we promised you, you know, foot for foot replacement and more, but we're not going to do that. We're going to revert back to some 2021 plan is totally not acceptable. So I think as the planning board, we really need to send a letter separately from the other matter to say that wasn't the agreement. The agreement is that that wall is going to be replaced. I have to go back to the recording to listen. I don't know whether it was 100 feet, linear feet, 300 linear feet. I don't know what the heck it was, but whatever, 100. And that was in addition to whatever plan that they had that was put out to bid previously, which is, I think, what Mr. Dennington was talking about. So I think that we should hold them to it and let them know that there was some conflating going on, and that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the promise that we were made is after the replacement. These older 2021 plans talk about replacement already, so that's fine, great, but that isn't the plan that we were talking to them about. It's above and beyond, and we expect above and beyond.
Ms. Brascio?
So, a couple things. I think, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't the vote that was taken, it was 100 feet of stone wall, and I can't remember, 13, maybe I'm wrong with the number of trees, but that was recorded with the clerk as well, am I not mistaken?
Yeah, I think it was 11.
11, okay, I was close. So I think there's two things here. I agree, Deb, I think there's, but I'm wondering how we accomplish this. And when the chair and vice chair of the select board were here, and town council was here, we talked about at least giving planning board the opportunity to review and have a discussion and do comments. And I think if we are afforded the opportunity to do that, I think we can address, Debbie, do you think we can address, I shouldn't speak for you, do you think we can address those very issues within that review?
I think so.
Okay. So I am fully supportive of asking where are the plans. We discussed this in an open meeting, and we look forward to submitting our comments on it. Thank you.
I would be in agreement with Ms. Brascio on that.
So send a letter saying this was said in an open meeting, waiting. Very good. Okay.
There's a lot of letter writing this evening. I'm happy to help in the way that I push that envelope. I'm happy to write that letter.
Okay, it's yours. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing, 4042 Central Street, History and Art Center, major site plan approval. Karina?
Excuse me, Ms. Latrell, I'm going to recuse myself.
Oh,
from the
okay.
discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brascio.
So in the attendees room, I'm looking for Mr. Wyshan. So Mr. Wyshan, I'm going to elevate him to panelist.
Good evening. Good evening.
Hi, Michael. And Mr. Russell, Attorney Russell, I'll be elevating you as well. Michael, is there anybody else attending on your team?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Oops. What? Uh-oh.
Terry, I have a quick report that Bridget is not getting any audio or video. Others must be, obviously, because they can. Okay. I was able to get everything out of the hall. Okay, so it might be her connection. Okay, thank you.
We can hear you.
Okay. So let me give you a quick update. Just trying to make sure everything's working. Okay. Okay, so the last planning board public hearing was on July 10th, at which an extension was granted to continue the meeting to this evening with an action deadline for the 28th. After that meeting, we received submission number 5 from the Southborough Historical Society's president, Michael Wyshan. It was distributed to the planning board members and also town departments. We have not received any town department comments back. We did also receive, in addition to the plans, was a stormwater operation and maintenance plan that describes during construction and post-construction best management practices of maintaining and protecting the system. That was also provided to Fuss and O'Neill for review. Fuss and O'Neill has provided a review of submission number 4, which was the previous submission. We received that and we provided that to the applicant team, to the planning board members. In the interim, we also received an updated stormwater operation and maintenance plan from the applicant's attorney, Mark Elbag, which I followed up with Conservation and with Fuss and O'Neill, and it seems to be in good order. It will still need to be stamped by a PE and signed by the owner to satisfy the requirements, what we need. The Fuss and O'Neill follow-up review letter had a handful of comments remaining, but we're leaving that up to the discretion of the planning board. There were items that we had discussed at previous meetings pertaining to landscaping, parking, events to be held related to parking, and the stormwater. So Fuss and O'Neill did indicate that the revised parking to a gravel parking lot versus paving would be, reduced impervious, and felt that at this point it was up to the discretion of the planning board if they still wanted to require stormwater calcs. But it appeared that Fuss and O'Neill does agree that the reduction in impervious may reduce the peak flows, but left the final say up to the planning board for that. Let's see what else. All right, and also, I provided a draft decision to the applicant team, to the planning board for review. Attorney, is it Russell or Russell?
Russell.
Attorney,
Thanks.
sorry, thanks. Okay, Attorney Russell
Right.
provided some comments that I figured the planning board could hear as we go through the decision part by part, so it doesn't get too confusing. We also received comments from the Open Space Preservation Commission Chair regarding items related to strait native species, and some recommendations for ground cover with a sketch. That was also provided to the applicant team and to the planning board members for review. And I think, I also received a comment from conservation agent as to the conditions requiring a SWIP, stormwater pollution prevention plan, an updated one, and a O&M plan, which we just discussed, that part has been provided but needs to be finalized, to be included, including both during and post-construction requirements. Conservation also had a comment of making sure that snow storage, stockpiling of snow would not be in the stormwater features. So that was addressed in the O&M, but I also think when we get to that condition, that statement should be added to one of the conditions, that snow removal there's no snow storage on stormwater features. So that brings us to the draft decision, which I have up on the screen here. So we could go through that and take the comments piece by piece if that's what you prefer.
Okay. So the first comment is on number 2.
So let me see here. So we're starting right at the beginning of the decision.
Wait a minute. It's number 2 under findings, I guess.
Okay, first, even before that, under the procedural history, number 3, I have highlighted 25 Common Street, Southborough, Mass. As the applicant's address. I was a little confused because there were different addresses on different documents, so I just want to confirm that we hold that as your current address.
That will work. Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. That's an easy
That's
one.
the office. That's the office of the principal address, principal office on file with the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office, so I would use that one.
Okay.
First, before we get started, Mr. Russell and Mr. Weishain, can you please introduce yourselves so people know who's talking?
Hi, I'm Michael Weisson, President and CEO of the Southborough Historical Society.
I'm Eric Russell, an attorney at Croquetas and Bluestein. I'm here representing the Southborough Historical Society.
Thank you.
Okay, we're a little slow because I have to facilitate and have context at the same time here. So, all right, as we move through the decision, onto the second page, there's a highlighted date right there, and that's just was supposed to correspond to when Fuss and O'Neill provided the final review comments. So that's a non-issue. Then as we go through to the findings, and in the findings, Attorney Russell had a comment on number 2. And he had described itself as an educational 501c3 nonprofit corporation, and replacing it with describes itself, that the Southborough Historical Society is a Massachusetts nonprofit educational corporation formed pursuant to MGL Chapter 180. So I guess,
Rena, excuse me, could you show us, we sent you a copy with the corrections highlighted. I think it would be much easier if we all just looked at the version that shows the sections at issue.
yeah, the problem is that it doesn't capture what's there, like you'd have to read the comments. It's up to the board. If you want me to show the other document, I can do that.
I just think it would be easier if you could see, rather than having to reread what's already written there. Some of it's rather lengthy in terms of citation law.
Yeah, it'll get quicker as we go. Let me
Okay,
see if I
however
can-
you want to do it.
Yeah, let me just see here. I'm not sure I know how to split the screen with two, but we can toggle in between.
So the track changes don't show up on that.
I'll-
But you can't see what's,
It's difficult to see the original text
okay.
versus, if Eric, maybe when we get to his comments, he says why he wants to change it, and then we can kind of look back at his, let me just look here for a second. I'll show you what it looks like, and then we can determine that. Sorry, I'm a little slow here. Okay, so the document you're seeing on the screen now is, okay. Oh, that's pretty clear. Okay, sorry. A little rusty. All right, so we're talking about finding number 2, where it says the Southborough Historical Society. And the planning board has the original hard copy for them to look at the same time if there's any confusion. So Attorney Russell, I just was curious why you wanted that to change, like how does it change the meaning?
This is kind of low-hanging fruit, I think. It's fairly kind of a technical update. The way it's drafted, well, first off, it says the authority describes itself rather than finding that it is a nonprofit corporation. But it also refers to Section 501c3, which is a provision of the Internal Revenue Code dealing with tax status. Under the Dover Amendment, what we're looking at is whether it's a Massachusetts nonprofit corporation, which is shown by looking at its articles of organization on file with the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office and whether it's formed under Chapter 180. So this just updates that.
And I took this out of your Dover Amendment letter, those words, so that's why I wrote it that way. I took it from your letter
Okay.
as what you had represented. I could write both there, it's not a big deal, and then,
Yeah, I believe what I said in the letter was it's a Massachusetts nonprofit educational corporation and recognized as exempt under Section 501c3 of the code. That's informational. It's not key to the decision or the Dover Amendment status. If you want to insert that, it's absolutely fine. But I do think the reference to Chapter 180 is important.
so would the planning board be all right with me having what I wrote plus his reference to MGL 180?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Down to number 4, it makes, Attorney Russell had said, he changed the tense, which made it clearer in that paragraph, so I think that was a positive change.
Were you okay with that?
Yep.
Yep. Oh, that's okay.
I do have something on number 5 and 6.
Okay. Let me just mark this. Okay. Number 5.
On 5, I think the Conservation Commission issued an administrative amendment to approval. I'm not sure about that. I don't know if it was administrative approval. I don't know if that's the same thing as an administrative amendment to an approval. It's just to check, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I have that. what I can do is note that, and then I'll fix it to what it says exactly on the approval letter. So you're saying it's an administrative
Amendment to an approval, I believe, to check.
amendment to approval. Check. Okay.
And 6 was really maybe just a question for me. Is this something new, or is this pre-existing non-conforming? Is it, the way it's written is sort of, it appears that, has it, this is it's a proposed new walk, it's not pre-existing, right? It's the proposed,
No, it is pre-existing.
It's a pre-existing.
okay, so,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, Michael, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I noticed that when I was reading it, it would be clear if it says something about pre-existing, because the building's footprint historically juts out actually over its property line onto the right of way.
Okay, yeah, I thought the same thing. I think it should say pre-existing non-conforming, and I think somewhere else there's a pre-existing non-conforming, so it struck me that this one should say this as well.
So a pre-existing non-conforming lot or structure? So I took this from the prior decision that lapsed, because at the time, it wasn't really pronounced, it was accepted. So I can add that language, pre-existing non-conforming, or lot and structure.
Yeah.
Do you have any opposition to that we say lot and structure? Because the structure means there's something in the setback, not conforming, and then the lot's not conforming, right? Are you saying the lot is pre-existing non-conforming? Attorney Russell?
Michael, can you answer that? Is it the lot or just the building?
I think the lot is the lot. It's just the building.
Okay.
Say that again?
The lot has always been the lot. It's the building that juts over the edge. So I don't think it's the lot that's non-conforming. I think the building, the setback
the
is
structure.
non-conforming. Structure.
Non-conforming structure, okay. Everyone's in agreement with that? Okay. Anything on number 7? Those are all standard cookie cutter. 7, 8, 9 just reiterates the criteria for site plan. Which takes us down to the waivers. And this waiver request is regarding the proposed gravel surfaced lot as opposed to a paved lot in accordance with 172-12B. So I don't think the applicant had any comment on that, so we're good with that?
So are you, Karina, comfortable with the drainage, erosion, siltation, dust, and appearance are satisfactorily controlled?
Well, one of the conditions that is coming is that they'll be required to provide a maintenance plan for the gravel parking lot
Okay.
at some point. So I'm not uncomfortable with the drainage aspect of it. I think that Fuss and O'Neill has looked at it now a couple times and had been given the supplemental information, and with Conservation's also administrative amendment approval, that we can feel relatively confident that with their O&M work and their maintenance plan that they submit, that they keep that parking lot in good order. That will be the important part, that A, it's built right grade-wise and then also maintained. So,
Okay. Are we all right, set with this? Should we vote on this waiver? Or wait till the end?
we might forget at the end. There's only one waiver.
Yep, so the motion is to grant waiver from zoning section 174-12B surfacing,
As written.
as written in the decision.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor. Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demuria, yes.
moving right along. The next highlight is just reflected of if the meeting closes tonight, if the public hearing and the vote. And that takes us to the conditions. One of the things I just want to let you know, Michael, is that the plans that Mark provided in submission number 5, only the cover page has a revision date. So we'll need to get two, if the plans are approved, we'll need to get 2 sets of those plans that have the revision date on all pages, somewhere in the title block, not just on the cover sheet. That way there'll be no confusion for mixed up plans, because we've had a couple of revisions. Just as a note.
I hear you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So these are the conditions. Number 1 is standard. There's no, if anyone has any comments on number 1. Number 2, I understand what you're doing, Eric, but that we usually don't specifically call out the waiver in that condition, and there is no waiver. It's actually stated in the findings about the parking in the front setback.
Yeah, unfortunately, that makes it inconsistent with this, which says that the applicant shall comply with all provisions of the general bylaws, zoning bylaws, rules and regulations applicable thereto. That's inconsistent with them not being required to comply with the 25% requirement there. So I would just ask that this either be in the conditions as an express carve-out or be done as a waiver.
So I don't think we can waive this.
I didn't think so either, which is why I put it in here. It's more typical.
Which is why we wrote it in the findings as a pre-existing non-conforming.
What if we just change the language to except for specific waivers granted, except for previously stated findings and specific waivers granted? Does that sound right?
I would be okay with the cross-reference to the findings.
Okay.
So just to be clear, except for, as stated in the findings?
Right, except for previously stated findings and specific waivers granted.
Okay. You good with that, Eric? Okay,
Yes, I'm okay with that.
super. Any comments on number 3?
I had a question. Is that a standard one for, is this Fuss and O'Neill that would?
Yeah, yeah,
It's a standard?
it's now standard for site plans,
Okay.
because we weren't getting as-built and we weren't making sure everything was complied to along the way.
Okay, good. I just wanted to.
Wait, are you committing us to further expense down the road?
Yes. So if, what we typically do
I-
is,
I don't-
Michael, let me just finish. What we typically do now is for site plans similar to subdivisions, we have the town's consultant do a couple of inspections at certain important points, like they'll check the drainage, and then they'll check that all the paving or gravel is done properly in the walkways, and then they'll do an as-built walkthrough. So,
And what does that cost?
well, we'll get a, once we have the approved plans, we get an estimate from Fuss and O'Neill for what it takes for them to do, say, 2 or 3 inspections and then a final as-built walkthrough to review the as-bills. They are required to review the as-bills, period, and this planning board has added this condition now consistently for the past couple of years. So I can't tell you specifically, what I don't think is exorbitant, you may think it is, so we'll get an estimate from them. And again, it's an escrow, it's a retainer.
Well, I know, you're holding our $3,500 interest-free.
No,
The
that's,
Fuss and well, excuse me for 1 second.
Yeah.
The Fuss and O'Neill reports to date have essentially said, we defer to the planning board. So there's been very little substantive material from this at all. And additionally, they spend a considerable amount of time, opining on portions of the adaptive reuse bylaw, which were not even applicable. So, I can't say that I've been, hugely impressed by their services, and I'd like to know what we're committing to with this expense that essentially added on to the end of the project. I mean, budgetarily wise, it's something that we should be able to know ahead of time what's coming down the road.
Michael, we need to make sure that what's been permitted is built, and this is the way of doing it. It's standard language, and we have precedent of doing this.
yeah, and if there's any retainer left in the review fee currently, we can utilize some of that to put towards whatever their new estimate is. So we'll get them that pretty quickly. I don't know what else to tell you. We can delay this and get an estimate from them and then continue the meeting.
Oh, absolutely,
It's not
positively not. But
trying-
I think
It's
I
not
think this
trying
is
to gouge anybody, it's just
no.
protecting
I
the
just think this
town.
is an unreasonable expectation on a small organization like ours. Frankly, just to have this stuff hanging out there as to what, because this has already cost thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars.
Well, we do
and
this
now to
when
have-
there's drainage involved and when there's particular grading, paving and gravel type, when there's unusual things. We just did this with another project, which was a minor site plan, because it involved the parking and the drainage. So those two things are critical to make sure that the project's built properly. And it's not really an exorbitant amount. I know you might not agree to that, but we'll get an estimate from them and we'll send it to you, and we can cross that bridge. I don't think that it'll require many inspections. It's probably, even like with the Eversource parking deck, there were 3 inspections, 2 during the construction and then 1 for the as-built. And that was a much more intense project than this, so.
Well,
I
we've already
anticipate
requested waiver from you guys for these fees. Because this is certainly a public service project headed by a very small charitable organization. So I would hope that you would work with us in waiving your own fee and doing everything possible to mitigate whatever the engineering consultancy for this. Because as I said, having worked in this industry all the time and reading these reports, I wasn't overly impressed. A lot of it referred back to you and left you to your own decisions. So, I'd like to make sure that what we're spending money on, public charitable dollars, are actually well-spent dollars. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
That'll be up to the board.
Do we want to ensure that this plan is built as permitted?
The condition stays.
Okay, next.
Okay, so number 4, this has to do with lighting. There's no exterior lighting proposed at this time. Subject to the understanding, you can read it on the board there. Anybody have any comments on that? I don't think Attorney Russell had any comments on that. Okay. Number 5, hours of operation, any comments on that? Okay. Number 6, this is about the landscaping, so we have some edits that Attorney Russell provided.
Yeah, and this was just to make this consistent with the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw refers to, species common in the area. It doesn't refer to straight native species in any section that applies to this project. So this is really about just keeping this consistent with the bylaw.
So I have to correct you on that. 174.13B 10C does refer to native species. And also it's in other sections of our zoning code. It's in Chapter 153. It's in the master plan. It's in the hazard mitigation plan. And as you know, zoning provisions can't be viewed in isolation. And the statute should be consistent and harmonious, and it is therefore clear, taken all together, that native plants are required for environmental reasons to support wildlife, water conservation, and stormwater mitigation. Additionally, native planting is a condition of the current stormwater permit from the Conservation Commission.
Well, I will respond to that last point because that permit was conditional upon planting hydrangeas and lavender. So that is obviously not the case. I'll leave it to Eric to refer to what you just stated as to the bylaw.
Section 174.13 B10C does refer to native plants, but it says the zoning bylaw encourages use of native plants. That's different than mandating them. And it prohibits use of plants that are specifically identified as invasive. And that's fine. Changing that from encourages to requiring, and changing the other language in the bylaw from species common in the area to a much different definition that isn't mandated is not consistent with the bylaw as written.
So I disagree. That was written in 1986. Since then, we realize how imperative native plants are. Additionally, the landscaping on this plan is trees are required, and I certainly understand how expensive trees are, and I, as a planning board member, was willing to accept shrubs instead of trees, but they definitely have to be native.
Well, as I've commented ad nauseum here, and I've sent you, I think, 40 references
Michael,
that show the
let
species that...
me interrupt you here. I went through all those 40 references, and they support native plants. They do not...
Well, excuse me, again, you are interrupting me. Native cultivars are in fact native plants. Meaning if you want to rewrite this bylaw to say straight species only, that is something you should bring to town meeting. That's not what this says. We are following exactly what the bylaw says. And not only that, I've planted Ilex verticillata specifically for you guys, and 2 varieties that were approved by the Conservation Commission in Needham that were deemed absolutely perfect for the Charles River Basin. It's not like we're planting exotic magnolias or Japanese maples here. We've met you halfway. We've agreed to give you oversight over this landscaping, which I think under Dover we don't have to do. And we're planting native species. Now, what you're arguing with me is whether cultivars of native species are not native species. I am not a botanist, although I work in the horticultural field. I don't know what your area of expertise is, but I don't think that's a discussion we should be having here. We should just simply follow what the bylaw says. And we've already determined and given you a planting schedule that says we are going to plant Ilex verticillata, and I forget 2 or 3 varieties that have been pre-approved and that we have used all over Boston, have been absolutely considered acceptable for conservation areas. So
we have consistently required native plantings in our landscaping.
We are providing you with native plantings. It's just that you are arguing with me over what constitutes a native planting. I don't think that is an appropriate argument for this forum. Let's get some experts in here. I'm happy to come in with you in the fall and help you rework these guidelines, which in fact are quite confusing and do not conform to current science and current thinking about what are the best plants for cultivar, what are the best plants for nature, what are the best plants for pollinators in general. That, however, is out of the scope of this discussion. We have agreed to plant Ilex verticillata. You already approved a plan in 2019 that called for hydrangeas and roses and lavender and every other exotic species. I think we've come a long way. And I think we've already provided this stuff. We've sourced it. We know where it's coming from. Can we just agree to disagree on this and, work it out in the bylaw later? If you want to make these changes, I might be supportive at town meeting.
Let me quote from one of your sources. Genetic diversity is the foundation for biodiversity, which is the foundation for healthy ecosystems. Open pollinated straight species natives provide this genetic diversity. Native cultivars do not.
That is one of those things
And they
that
all,
we
and
do.
all of them are along those lines.
No, that is totally not true. I mean, I wouldn't have provided them to you if all of them were along those lines. The fact is that the jury is still out on this. And look, at the end of the day, you need to follow your own bylaw. It says species common in the area. It doesn't say straight native species. And the fact that you've done what I consider to be really large legal overreach in these decisions, is something of serious concern. I got that thing from the Open Space Preservation Commission this morning and almost fell out of my desk. Since when does the Open Space Preservation Commission tell us how to use leaf mulch?
The Open Space Preservation Commission advises the planning board.
It doesn't say, this is advisory. It says, you shall not use. You will not do. Have you actually read the language of that thing? I think you need to follow your own bylaw. It says species common in the area. I think that's a poor wording. However, that's what you
It
have.
says the town of Southborough encouraged native planting in all their landscape plans.
And encourage is exactly that, encourage. And we are providing you with native planting. And to try to tell me from someone who's worked 4 years in
Michael,
this
let's
field.
see what the rest of the board feels.
So I'm with Mrs. Luttrell on this. The condition, in my opinion, should be as it reads in our draft and not with the proposed change from the proponent.
Ms. Houlihan?
I'm in agreement with you and Mr. Stein. We've asked this of all of our people coming before us, and I think this is just a bone of contention. We're never going to move past this and get through with the other agenda items, so I think we just need to collaborate here.
I'll have to say,
Very quick.
I'm troubled by by this, and because I think that it is true that our zoning bylaw doesn't exactly provide for what we're asking. The language is weak, and it does say encourage. Also, that the 2019 approval didn't say straight native. And so I'm troubled by this because I think that as a board, we do need to do something about this, whether we have a policy or a guideline or we change the bylaw. But I agree we can't keep doing this. But I'm more of a purist, and a section, this section of the zoning code states encourages, and it doesn't mandate. So that's where I fall on this.
So it looks like the majority is going to keep the original language that the town planner had put with regards to native species.
Okay.
I think that decision is illegal, but we'll come to that when we come to that.
Okay, so I think that Eric's comments were related specifically to that one aspect of that. So we'll move on to number 7. Number 7
So that one we would keep the same as yours, too.
is for...
Number 7 has a second part to it as well, I believe. Actually, maybe it's also in number 6. Because this requires a landscape plan to be submitted and approved, and then requires additional information to be submitted and approved again. It seems duplicative. It seems like one plan should be able to be submitted and approved if it's in conformance with what you're asking for.
I'm not sure I follow, because we don't require a second landscape plan. What happens is if you whenever new plantings are planned on the site, native plants shall be, so if you want to change your landscaping, yeah, you would have to submit a landscape plan. If you're changing what's there or proposing something new, and then there'll have to be straight native species to New England. No, planting materials and substitutions, including substitutions replace plants that die, shall be approved by the town planner. What happens is, if something dies and you want to replace it, you send the invoice from the nursery or your order, and we take a look at it and to confirm that it's a straight native species. And then I'm simply given the go-ahead from the planning board to move on with that, and that it's approved that
Well,
that species is good. Excuse
So
me. it's
section
fine.
7 is unclear as to when approval then is needed from the town planner. Whenever new plantings, that includes after the landscape plan has been submitted. So I would suggest updating that so that it's clear when somebody has to come back to the town planner.
Well, it's saying right there that it comes back to the town planner prior to installation. So any new plantings, whenever new plantings are planned on the site, native plants shall be required, period. Planting materials will be
Yeah.
100% straight species native to New England cultivar. Planting materials and substitutions, including substitutions to replace plants that die, shall be approved by the town planner prior to installation.
Well, first of
How does
all,
that
your
sound
your
confusing?
jurisdiction only extends to these plantings contiguous to the parking lot. You have no jurisdiction over any other parts of the planting. So that wording on the site is really ambiguous. Also, I just want to remind this board, I'm just really appalled. You cannot legally, under this state, promulgate rules and regulations more onerous than the actual terms of the bylaw. You do not have authority to simply vote what you would like to do and decide to create this native species, a straight species. You do not have this authority. Forget about Dover.
So you're saying we should require trees instead of shrubs?
If you would like some trees, I'll plant trees as soon as we can find some agreement on what constitutes a native species. Again, you don't even define in your rules and regulations what a straight native species is or a native species. And you're defying, current scientific thinking
All
about
right,
the
Michael,
value.
we've already voted on this and we're moving on.
Well,
So,
So my point on 7 is, says whenever new plantings.
you
You
want
can
some
submit a landscape
clarification?
plan, and then the plantings after that are new. Do you have to come to the town planner right then again? That's my question. It's not clear from the way this is written.
Well, I think.
You may know what it means, but it is not written clearly.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about this here. Whenever new plantings are planted on the site, native plants shall be required. That's just a statement. Planting materials be 100% cultivars. So whenever new plantings are planned on the site, that wouldn't really trigger necessarily a modification to site plan. It just means if they're proposing new plantings. Maybe if we get
How
rid
about new
of the
plantings?
first sentence and we just say planting materials be 100 species, cultivars will not be used. Planting materials and substitutions, including substitutions that shall die. So if we strike the first sentence.
I think that makes it better, and I think planting materials and substitutions, maybe other than what was approved in the landscape plan. So it's clear that the landscape plan is approved, he can move ahead with the plantings. If he does anything different, he has to come back.
Planting materials and substitutes. Say you can't find one of the plants that you put on your landscape plan. This enables you to come to the town planner and say, we want to have this substituted native straight species instead, and it doesn't have to come back to the planning board. You see what I'm saying? If you can't find a
Yeah,
certain species, it comes back to me, and I confer with the planning board and then go back. So you don't have, it's not a whole meeting process.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm saying planting materials and substitutions apart from what has been approved on the landscaping plans. Because once the landscaping plans are approved, if he doesn't need to come back, he shouldn't need to. If this just blankly says planting materials shall be approved by the town planner, then that requires him to come back a second time for something that was approved in the landscape plan.
So maybe if it says
Well, what,
Just
substitution.
planting substitutions, yeah.
Yeah, so just
Yeah.
planting substitutions. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
The substitutions, well, yeah, planting substitutions.
That's fine.
okay.
Yeah.
We got
and I
it.
still have a problem on the site. Have we addressed that? I've gotten confused in this conversation.
Sorry?
On the language are planned on the site.
So we're striking the first sentence of number 7,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
then when you get to the last sentence, we're striking materials and. We're
Could
just-
you advance this up the screen?
Oh, yeah, I'm
Or is
sorry.
it just me?
It's a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go.
Okay,
So that
thank you.
one, that represents actually a complete change, but in the original decision draft, we're just going to say planting substitutions, including the substitutions of plants that die shall be approved by the town planner. So if you have to substitute, say your hedge dies, and you have to plant it, you can't find that type of plant anymore, and you propose a new plant for that hedge, you have to come to the town planner, me. Planting substitutions, including substitutions to replace. And if you can't find a species, it's essentially saying you don't come back fully to the full planning board to approve if a plant dies and you can't replace it with that particular species. Is that correct, right? That's my understanding.
Is everyone okay with that?
Okay. On to number 8. Any comments there? I just want to protect the trees that are, there are 3 trees or such that were going to be protected. And then
All set?
make sure no other trees, okay. Number 9, off-site parking. No comments on that, okay. Number 10, 12 deeded parking. Spaces, okay, no comments on that. Number 11 is a maintenance plan for the parking lot shall be submitted to the planning board for approval, but I think we should say when it has to be submitted. You want this prior to,
I think we already submitted that. Did we not? That's what Mount Elbeck sent.
that was for the stormwater operation and maintenance. So,
I think it also included the parking lot.
yeah, I'll double check that. I think it does mention, like, if it gets riddled, et cetera, that it gets graded certain amount of times per year. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So that may be already done. We'll keep that in there just to make sure it's there. Number 12 is the Southborough Historical Society is responsible for the maintenance and snow removal for the entire parking lot. And I'd just like to add the statement from Conservation that says, snow storage shall not be within the stormwater features.
You know, again, I would wonder why that would be in here. Conservation has that in their own.
Melissa said it was a concern for her, so she hoped it would be iterated. I passed these conditions by her. And you're not doing it anyway, and you show it on the plan, so it's just re-emphasizing to the contractor or future people who plow that you can point out if they do that, it protects you as well. You can say, look, this is what you're not allowed to do. Okay. Number 13, any comments on that? I don't think so. Okay. 13. All right, it gets a little tricky here because what you see on screen, some of the conditions were removed. So number 14, the original said here that there shall be no kitchen on site until or unless approved by the Board of Health. And
I
you had deleted
removed
that.
this. Yeah, I removed this because there is going to be a kitchen on site. The Board of Health has not approved a certified kitchen, but they have approved a limited kitchen for things like staff use or catering. But it's just not a certified or commercial kitchen.
So maybe we can say unless, so what you can do is if that, there shall be no kitchen on site unless approved. So you would supply us with a memo from the Board of Health that says the kitchen you are proposing is approved.
Well, the Board of Health already approved these plans, so I don't know why we would need any additional approval. These plans were submitted.
Because they asked that this be,
I met with the officer of the Board of Health, and when we put in the new septic already, they asked me about this. We told them what we said. He said that would be fine. So I don't know why there would be any additional question about this because the system was designed and the plans were sent to them already with this in place.
So it should be no problem
yeah,
that you
because it's
provide a
approved
letter.
by the
So
Board of
if it's
Health.
Well, I would agree to the insertion of the word commercial kitchen on site.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Let me just look at the. There was something here from Board of Health Director back in May. We spoke to the group from a food kitchen perspective as well as septic. Currently, they do not have a kitchen. They are not designed to have a kitchen. To add a kitchen, they would need to update their septic. Our recommendation for them was a catering kitchen, which to us means they do not prepare or clean up food. A caterer would bring in food as well as remove the dirty dishes post-eating. So maybe we can,
Well, that's why it says there should be no commercial kitchen on site, or could say. That's exactly what that says.
so no commercial kitchen on site.
They don't want any food prep there.
Yeah, they don't want food prep there, right? Which means they do not prepare or clean up food. So, our recommendation for them was a catering kitchen, which to us means they do not prepare or clean up food. So, no preparation of food.
But no,
cleanup
I
of
mean,
food?
you can't say that for like a staff kitchen.
Yeah.
What they're talking about is a commercial kitchen.
Okay,
Because what we had originally thought about was going to potentially do a commercial kitchen in order to provide an additional source of revenue for the building. However, it became rapidly unfeasible due to cost and because the septic system, even as redesigned and constructed, could not contain it. It would require some huge machination of a septic system. So we said, no problem, we can't afford it, we're not going to do it. And they said, fine. So that was the extent of the whole thing.
okay.
So strike this condition.
So the board has a consensus that they don't mind striking this condition. Fair enough?
Hallelujah.
Because you'd have to go to the Board of Health for your septic anyway. So, okay. Are you on board with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Strike condition. All right. Number 15, upon site plan approval to lapse, that means we need 2 sets of plans with that revised date on all the plans.
Corinne, it's number 14.
Oh, yeah, we struck number 14. Oh, I'm reading, because there are going to be conditions that were removed as well on the draft. So, yeah, okay.
I think that one was okay.
All right. Upon site plan approval, no comments there. The next condition was a copy of the planning board endorsed approved site plans. No comments. Next one, major site plan approval shall be recorded at the registry of deeds, that's standard, with the letter-size set of the plans attached as an exhibit. No full-size plans, just so that there's a reference to them. A pre-construction meeting with the planning department shall be held prior to construction activity, and then you just let us know 14 days in advance of the construction, in writing, email or such, and your anticipated construction start date.
So we struck those clauses?
We struck 4 sections there. They were numbered 18, 19, 20, and 21.
That's right.
And the reason for that is that all of those refer to pre-construction, but construction has already started on this.
Yeah, so we should probably still have some kind of, did conservation go out and inspect the erosion control?
Yes. We're on Melissa's regular rounds, and I actually have a call into her this week.
Do you have some sort of construction schedule? You know, that you have your contractor work towards. It does get adjusted, I understand reality.
Well, we thought we'd have this building open by the end of July, so where do you think that puts us?
So you don't update a construction schedule ongoing?
Well, there's no point because of construction supply chain delays. We've been waiting 6.5 months for windows. You cannot move forward without windows. Now we're looking at a 4 to 5 months delay potentially with this elevator. So, you can make the best of plans and hope for them, but if the manufacturer tells you that critical elements of the building are not to be available,
Okay.
the 400 amp service, for instance, for the electric and solar is a year out, and they have to jury rig it in the between time. So, we're hoping that we can wrap this up, largely.
So the intent of the pre-construction meeting is typically we have a member of Fuss and O'Neill there to orient to the site, meet the contractor, et cetera.
This is already.
Not having we could have a initial inspection with Fuss and O'Neill, and I would be in attendance with them or something like that.
Well, again, this has already been permitted by the building department, and it's already underway. I mean, it is substantially underway according to this current permit. I mean, what are they inspecting?
Can I just ask a quick question of the planning board and Karina? 18 to 21, where they're recommending striking, what are the implications of that for us?
Well,
And in general, are we okay with that and just move on to the final one, or no?
well, I'm not adverse to not having a pre-construction meeting, because if we engage Fuss and O'Neill, they'll be out there on their first inspection, and they'll meet the people, and they'll make sure you have your plans on site, et cetera, and your decisions. So that's not a big deal. And the schedule, I understand that it's probably pretty dynamic with the nature of things. So I'm not adverse to not having that pre-construction. But we do need to have on file the name of the person responsible on site.
Well, that's all on file with the building permit. I mean, John Della Pistoli is
But
the
we
general
get
contractor.
calls too, Michael. We get complaints and things, so when we can reach out to somebody, we have a number to call. You know what I mean? It's a typical thing that we require in case there's public input or
Well,
call.
but I'm asking you though, is this not already on file with all the various permits that have already pulled? GLC, general contractor, electrical, I mean, all that stuff is on file with the building department
And you should
already.
also have them, right? So if you just pop me an email with those two numbers and contacts, that satisfies that condition.
Yep, fine.
It's not a big deal. Instead of me having to go find it somewhere, I can have it in
That's
the
fine,
file.
that's fine.
Okay. So we would strike the pre-construction meeting and schedule? Is the planning board in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay. And we will give me the information on the site super, et cetera. And then I did speak with conservation, and the agent recommended that we do include requirement for an updated SWIP, okay, stormwater pollution prevention plan, including during construction and post-construction requirements. So you must have one on file already for the paved parking lot for when you got your stormwater management permit. So we'd need just an updated one tweaked to what you're actually proposing there. And I think that your engineer could probably do that for you, because he's already done the stormwater O&M. So I don't think there was any, so we should keep that SWIP requirement. That was a recommendation from
Yep.
conservation.
Okay.
So just confirming, we struck the former 18,
Yep,
and we're keeping
19,
19 and 20.
20.
Yeah.
Now we're on 21.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, and 21. So we did receive the stormwater O&M, and it appears to be complete. We just needed, the final version that Mark Elberg sent was not stamped and signed, and then the owner needs to sign it, which would be represented by you, Michael. So you just have to get it PE stamped, and then you would have that number 21 already satisfied.
But we would maintain it in the conditions here, even though it's already satisfied.
Yes.
Yes, so we would keep 21 in
Because
there.
it's not fully satisfied, because it needs to be stamped.
Yep.
Not a big deal. And,
And going back real quick to 19 and 20, both of these, if you're keeping those, they still refer to prior to construction. I would,
Oh, yeah.
remove that reference. If you say the applicant shall provide name of the person responsible, for the site, that's fine. Just don't tie that to being before construction, since
Right.
that's not, that can't be done.
But we do need a
same
time
as you were
certain for the SWIP and the O and M to be provided.
Just strike the end of 20. That says prior to construction.
Yeah.
And strike prior to the comma on 19.
But we just need to have a time frame that they do have to submit it by, so that it happens at some point. So prior to construction completion, you'll have your SWIP, or during construction.
Michael, what do you think is realistic there?
Sorry, I totally zoned out here. I'm sorry, what is the question?
When are you gonna
For-
submit this updated SWIP? What's your time frame that you could do that and get the O and M stamped and signed? During
Well,
construction?
we already did the O and M. We sent it to you. It just needs to be stamped and signed, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
So how
Okay,
long will it
well-
take you to do that?
we need a
Well, I can
time
have it emailed
certain.
tomorrow.
About 30 days or 60 days?
Yeah, does that work for you?
Copy of
30
the
days?
final updated SWPPP stamp, which we did, right? We have that.
For the gravel lot?
Yeah,
Okay.
for the gravel.
60 days. it's
60
fine.
days?
Yeah.
So 60 days. Within 60 days,
All right, Karina, I'll talk to you tomorrow because I'm a little confused as to exactly what you're asking me for. But if it's just a stamped and certified copy of that thing and a signature, that's easy enough to do. I thought we'd already provided a copy of the final updated SWPPP thing.
no, I talked to Melissa and she said they didn't have one. So that's why we needed one that reflects what you're actually proposing here with the gravel lot. You may have had one from the old,
Well, didn't conservation vote on that way with that?
it might be a requirement in their conditions for the approval.
Okay, I'll ask the
We need it.
engineer. I don't know the answer.
Okay. So within 60 days.
Yep.
That's just to make sure we have a time frame of a deadline. Okay, and that's it. I don't think there are any other comments. Okay.
So we voted on the waiver, so now just the conditions as,
So the motion is to,
Close.
well, do you want me to do the conditions first, or?
Well,
we
it's
just-
a decision.
Okay.
You can do the conditions too. It all depends on what you're comfortable with.
I'm comfortable with making the motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
for motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demuria, yes.
And the motion is to approve the decision of major site plan approval for 40-42 Central Street, Fayetteville Hall, Southborough Historical Society History and Arts Center, as amended this evening.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demuria, yes.
So that's it, Michael. I'll update this draft, have the chair sign it, and we'll file it with the town clerk ASAP. And we'll just need 2 sets of approved plans with that revision date. And then we'll get the planning board to endorse them. And
I'll
then-
talk with you tomorrow. I'll be
Yeah.
in the townhouse. I'll talk with you tomorrow to make sure that we got I understand fully what you need.
Okay, success.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
So
Can I
just a
think-
point of
wait.
order,
yep.
by a show of hands, who is here for the 40B agenda item? Okay, so we're going to take that out of order now.
Okay.
So we're just going to.
So the next item is a discussion item, 120 Turnpike Road, 40B, and 250 Turnpike Road, 40B. I should mention that the expectation is that, my expectation, unless the board disagrees, that the board isn't going to compile comments tonight because we have a site walk tomorrow for both of these. But if there's any comments the board wants to address now or wait till the next meeting to address everything, it's up to the board.
So, I mean, my previous concern, I've already voiced my position on this, which was the concern about the use relative to the original variance from the ZBA for the site. So I really don't have much more to add to that for now. Thank you.
Ms. Houlihan?
Yeah, I have no comments until our site walk, and my concern was more around the 250 Turnpike Road versus 120.
Mr. Maria?
Yeah, I'm going on the site walk tomorrow. I prefer to save my comments for after. Thanks.
Ms. Braccio?
Same, I'm not sure if there's any members of the public that may not be able to make our next meeting when we actually draft a letter, if they want to speak tonight. Thank you.
Okay. So does anyone have any comment on 120 Turnpike Road? Anyone in the... I don't see any hands raised. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Freddie Gillespie, Chair of the Southborough Open Space Preservation Commission. And for the 120, which abuts the most significant open space parcel in the town of Southborough, we certainly have concerns. We are going to be hopefully submitting comments ourselves, but I did want to, as an individual, mention, and I believe the Stewardship Committee of the Conservation Commission will be having comments, but it's often played out, or I've heard, well, there's no neighbors to object. Well, the wildlife habitat is valuable, and it's valuable for the people who use that land, it's valuable for the wildlife, and the impacts of this development to that are significant. So we just want to put that on your radar, that it's not just, oh, there's not a neighborhood there that's going to come out and oppose it because, you know, the animals and the birds and the bees and butterflies, they can't. And, you know, the impact of this, it can be significant, and there are things that will be exempt from our local zoning bylaw, say the lighting bylaw, which has a huge negative impact on wildlife habitat. And the fact that we don't believe that lot is buildable, and that should just, we don't think that should just be ignored because, you know, we never like to be in a place, and we've talked about this on our commission before, where conservation values are in opposition with affordable housing or community housing. The problem is often the most unbuildable lots are chosen for these developments because if it's an easy-to-develop lot, it's not done with a 40B, it's done with, you know, a higher-priced development. So these types of lots often put environmental concerns up against housing concerns. And I advocate for better looking at places to meet our housing requirements, which we could do with better planning for projects than allowing non-developable lots to be built out because people feel, well, there's not a neighborhood or a vibrant neighborhood with a lot of housing because, you know, it's 100 acres of conservation land, which has significant value to this town in addition to the wildlife. So I just wanted to put that on everyone's radar. Don't just think, you know, there's not going to be a lot of people fighting against it because there's not a lot of abutters. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you receive a letter from town council? He was going to send a more formalized letter than the back and forth. Have you received anything from him? Didn't he? Okay.
No, not yet. You're talking about when you had met with him during town council, townhouse hours.
Yeah, so we had kind of a back and forth on the A&R, and for special permits. And I and Lisa met with him at town, his office hours last week, just to try and be clear on what he was saying. So he was saying that the zoning board can endorse an A&R and waive local zoning, which is true. But the state statute requires at least 20 feet of frontage, and he was clear that they wouldn't be able to waive that because it's a state statute. And he thinks they're going to have to do some type of a subdivision to make it work. And he said he was going to put that in a formalized letter, so maybe we can ask him that.
Okay, yeah, I just have informal email, short answers.
Specific to 120, Mimi? Okay.
Yes, because it had that, they both do, but this had that variance and the special permit. And
So did town council have any comment on the variance? That it said they can't add any buildings?
so they would, he thinks that they'll have to somehow amend the special permit and somehow do a subdivision, so that's a different lot, so there won't be a third building on that lot. And it's complicated. So anything else on 120? 250, do you want to, the same, hold comment until after? Does anyone in the audience have any comment on 250?
Good evening. I'm Jesse Wall. No, I'm just kidding. It's getting late, and I'm getting, it's almost 9 o'clock, and I should be long gone by now. Anyway, my name is John St. Andre. I live at 14 Schuyler Drive. I'm a neighbor to the land that's being under proposal to be developed, and I'm also representing several of the abutters that abut the property that Mr. Ferris wants to construct this 4-story monstrosity on. I won't go into all of the specifics of the issues that we have, but I think I at least like to address them, because if you're going on the site visit tomorrow, this is what I think you should be looking at, and this is what we're worried about. Apart from the restrictions, which we have gone to town council on, who agrees with us, those restrictions are still in force. Restrictions meaning you can't build on that lot. Putting that aside for now, we have major concerns in several different areas. The first thing is when you get to the site, if you try to access the site from Route 9, and you go and you walk in the parking lot next to the 250 building that's already up now, you're not going to see the site as it's going to be after they rip out all those trees. You're just not going to see it. What I suggest is that you enter the site from Schuyler Drive, from Sarson Stone, and from Parkerville. Walk the properties. It's relatively safe to do that. You're going to need boots. You're going to need a mosquito netting probably, and maybe a machete. But when you get there, what I would like you to think about is on the western side of the proposed lot, which is Sarson Stone Way. When Sarson Stone Way was developed back in '85 or so, a drainage system was installed. The drainage system for Sarson Stone Way starts up at the top of Sarson Stone Way, which is a steep hill. This is behind Eagle Leasing, and it runs down into a catch basin in front of 2 of the lots that are on Sarson Stone Way that abut Mr. Ferris's property. there is a drainage easement that runs between the two lots. The drainage easement carries the stormwater from upper Sarsonstone as well as from lower Sarsonstone, because there's another hill that goes up. That stormwater travels down a drainage pipe, and it goes into a huge detention basin in the rear of the two lots on Sarsonstone Way. I think they're 3 and 5. But you'll see, because there's a one catch basin there that leads to the back, when you go to the back of the property, you'll eventually come to this detention pond. This detention pond, I went out there after the rain that we had on July 4th. It was 200 feet wide. You could, I threw things into it, and just to hear it splash, it was that deep and that large. But that detention pond is bounded on the east, which is Mr. Ferris's side, by a berm. Through that berm runs a drainage pipe. The drainage pipe, I believe, is designed to drain the detention pond. That pipe is about 30 to 35 feet from the border of Mr. Ferris's property. When that rain comes down and the stormwater discharges from that detention pond, it comes out as a stream. You can see the remnants of the stream now. And if you walk and you get back far enough, you'll see that that stream meanders right down through the stone wall that separates the Ferris property from the Sarson stone lots, and it goes right through Mr. Ferris's property. And we're concerned because we're not sure what effect this building is going to have on that stormwater drainage management system that's in effect now. And also, it appears that that drainage, the detention pond and the pipes are clogged. So that thing is always full. What if they were unclogged? I think that that stream is going to be a lot more volume-wise than it would be if it wasn't clogged. But it serves the Sarsonstone neighborhood as a stormwater discharge system. So take a look at that detention pond, take a look at the stream in back, and you should see evidence of that stream. If it isn't wet now, you can certainly see where the ground has been moved by the water going into that land. On the opposite side of the lot, on the eastern boundary, there is, according to a government agency topography map, what they call a riverine. There's a river that goes underneath Parkerville Road on the eastern corner of Parkerville Road, goes under Parkerville Road, and it goes into the Ferris property. It's not labeled on any of his plans. It's indicated, I think, it says wetland, but it doesn't, it's a riverine, according to the government. I think the impact of that is that if it's a riverine, it's a perennial stream, and I don't think you can build within 200 feet of that. This project looked like it's going to fall right in the middle of that. So there's that. What happens when this project is built, a 4-story apartment building, parking lots, a roof that has runoff? What happens to that water? Where does it go? There's another factor here, too. On the corner of, further down Parkerville Road at 133, I've been told that when the people who bought that house in 2004 moved in, they had about 12 to 14 years of floods in the back of their property that went into their basement, and that water came down from the Ferris property. For some reason, it stopped. They don't know why. But now they're wondering if the woods are removed and the ground is now not made soil anymore, it's pavement, where's that water going to go? Are they going to get that drainage again? Are they going to flood again? They're worried about that. So when you go to take the site visit, take a look at those 3 things. Another thing, if you enter the property from Skylar Drive, you go to the neighbor's property in the back. You'll see how nicely landscaped they are, how the trees are gone. And when you get back there, you'll see that behind them is forest, and it's peaceful and it's private. And when this building goes up, it'll be 4 stories high, the trees will be gone, it's all going to be visible, not only to the neighbors who are living there, but the people who are in the apartment house. So these people who thought that they were buying a forest for a backyard are going to go out there after this building is constructed, and they're going to see people up top waving to them. Hi, how you doing? How you doing? Good morning, good morning. You know, this is kind of ridiculous to think that something this size could go there. But you need to go to those properties and try to imagine what it's going to look like when all of those woods are cut down. So there is the stormwater consideration that I talked about. There's also the effect on the privacy of these people and what it's going to look like to them. Try to imagine a 4-story building in the back of this of the properties, especially on Skylar Drive, because they're the ones who are going to really see it. We're worried about, obviously, the noise and light pollution. This is not going to be a building that is going to sit on Route 9. It's not in Siberia. It's right in the backyard of all the neighbors. Noise, light, cars coming in. You got, 60 units times 2 cars, 120 coming in and out all day long, going right behind these properties. And then you got the lights on. You got moving trucks coming in. You've got landscaping trucks coming in. You've got garbage trucks or whatever. You got a lot of traffic back there. There's a concern about this. We're worried about the traffic. What's going to happen with that? Now, we understand very well that the town has a need for affordable housing. But one of the requirements, I think, for mass housing is, does this site fit in with the neighborhood? Is it appropriate for this neighborhood? And we believe it is not. And so when you take your site visit, that's what I hope you would take a look at when you get out there. I have some diagrams that I didn't bring tonight, but I could send them to you to show you exactly what I'm talking about, and I'll do that in the morning, so you'll have it. All right, thank you.
Fred Harvey, 129 Parkerville Road. I'm a direct abutter to the 250 project. Just want to revisit one issue that was raised last fall. That's regarding restrictions on the use of the land. We brought that up a couple of times, and actually John made a very good case in regard to that. It went to the board and for consideration to the town council. At a subsequent meeting afterwards, the word that came back to us was that, yes, there are restrictions on the use of the land and that it follows the land itself. So what we'd like to do is make sure that issue is incorporated in the response back to mass housing to let them know about that and that in town council's opinion in regards to that, because obviously that's another issue that we're concerned about. We believe that all began in the early 1980s, 1984, and that was established, and there is documentation that exists in regards to that, in regards to planning meeting minutes. So we're kindly asking that issue be brought up to mass housing. Thank you.
So John Palmer, 131 Parkerville Road. I've been up here before. I am a direct abutter of 250 Turnpike and what's being proposed. Thank you for putting that up. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments. So I'll try to keep it short. I'm going to use some pictures and some comments just to make some of the points that we've been trying to make. So if you can go to the second page of this. That one there, yep. So this is 250 Turnpike Road, a 3-story building on commercially zoned land. It already towers over the existing landscape and the trees in the background. If you can move on. The next page shows Meeting House Lane. It's my understanding this was a housing development under 40B several years ago. It's two-story townhomes, and it's actually referenced in Southborough's affordable housing master plan a couple of times over as kind of model development for affordable housing. So that's what I think of when I think about affordable housing in Southborough. If you go to the next page. So this is Madison Place. We're all familiar with this. It's up on a hill, like this proposed property would sit up on a little bit of a hill. These are three-story units, and there's a number of them. And this was, from what I understood, a friendly 40B proposal that went through the town and through the state. And as you can see from the photos, these three-story buildings tower over the existing landscape, and you can clearly see it from Route 9 and other vantage points. If you move to the next one. So this is, everybody's familiar with this one. This is at 990, and it's now U-Haul. It's partially on Southborough, partially in Framingham. It's a four-story plus building and coincidentally, I was interested to learn it's the only four-story building in all of Southborough, from my understanding. So interesting that there's no other four-story buildings in all of Southborough. And then lastly, if you flip to the last page, when I look at the site plan, the proposed site plan for the 5.5 acres on the back parcel of 250 Turnpike, it just seems enormous, and it seems grossly misplaced for a 5.5 acre parcel, residentially zoned, with the wetlands, with the grading issues that John so nicely spoke of, and the drainage concerns and drainage issues with the topography of the land, and shoehorning this within a residential neighborhood made up of Parkerville, where I live, Skylar, and Sarsonstone. So I'd ask the board to consider that when they do their site walkthrough tomorrow. And I would ask respectfully that the planning board, submit, our concerns as part of your concerns to Mass Housing.
So Eric Glazer, 9 Skylar Drive. I believe I've been up here before, so thank you again for listening. I had some talking points that I'm actually adjusted based on the commentary from the Conservation Committee. Around the 120 and the 250, we all recognize we have a affordable housing need in this town, and it's very difficult. I think the point that you're hearing consistently is the sheer scale of these developments and how they fit within the context of the surroundings. And in particular, because the 250 affects my house and my neighborhood, to reiterate, this thing is grossly out of proportion in our belief. It doesn't necessarily mean we're against development, but it has to, we believe, fit within the right context. And similarly, perhaps for the 120 property as well, which on the face of it, we were more enthusiastic about because of the sheer scale and the quantity of housing which could actually meet the town's needs. But we would just ask as you go through this, and we'll do the same with the other boards in town, is just consider the scale and the impact and what it will mean. And also, of course, the loss of the trees and the woods. I mean, it's an environmental impact, perhaps not as much as the 120, but nonetheless it is. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate you taking the time. 9 Scholar Drive.
Anyone else here?
Hand raised.
Okay. It's not Jesse Wall, is it? Mark Davis. If you could introduce yourself, Mr. Davis?
I've been involved in this for 35 years.
I'm sorry you were muted, so if you
right.
introduced yourself, we didn't hear you, so could you?
Okay, Mark Davis,
Thank you.
13 Skyler Drive. I've been involved with this particular property and Eagle Leasing as they were originally developed over the past 35 years. At the time that AJ Lane came in front of the town, there were 10 of us who lived on Schuyler Drive. I happen to have lived on the dirt road end of it. But we basically were concerned, not necessarily with having an office building on Route 9, but making sure that the 5.5 acres was a permanent buffer between what was going on Route 9 and our neighborhood. The land is heavily burdened with wetlands. It's questionable, at least when I spoke to the Bartolinis 35 years ago, it's questionable whether or not it would even perk. Its frontage is along a wetland area along Parkerville, so that we requested from Andy Lane to make this an unbuildable lot. And in return, the quid pro quo was that as a neighborhood, we wouldn't object to as many waivers and design considerations on the office building on Route 9. And he agreed with us. We left that selectmen's meeting feeling pretty good that we had an agreement that this would be a no-build parcel. When Leaf Systems came in the early 90s, they needed a special permit in order to do manufacturing on the first floor. We were consistent, as we were with Andy Lane. We had the same two conditions. I didn't mention the other condition earlier. The two conditions we've always had on this land is A, that it be classified as unbuildable, and B, that there be no traffic that would enter directly onto Parkerville Road. So when Leaf Systems came in, they agreed to those provisions. And in fact, they went one step further. They allowed for a 25-foot buffer between the residential piece and Sarson Stone backlots and Schuyler Drive backlots. When Eagle Leasing came in, we went to the ZBA at the time and raised many of the same issues, that we were concerned about traffic leaking onto Parkerville Road. We were concerned about the lighting. We were concerned about trucks going in and out of the site. And the next morning, I'm out mowing my lawn, and David Eagle's father came right up, and he and I sat on the front lawn and chatted for about 2 hours. And he basically said all the right things, that his backland, and you can see a piece of his land goes up behind Sarson Stone, he wouldn't develop on that. He would make his lighting less obtrusive to the neighborhood. He included conditions in his parking lot and his trucking. And with our help, he ended up getting a deceleration lane off of his site onto Route 9, which really made a difference for us to safely get off Route 9 onto Parkerville Road. So our relationships for 35 years with all of these property owners were actually quite good. Eagle Leasing has been a marvelous neighbor. In fact, David lived in Sarson Stone for many years. He was on the ZBA. And I don't think we've ever really had an issue with Eagle. We never had an issue with Andy Lane. We never had an issue with Leaf Systems. In fact, with the empty building, I kind of miss the people walking through our neighborhood at lunchtime getting their exercise. But clearly, this 5.5 acre lot was unbuildable, and each of the owners of 250 received benefits from that classification, whether it's our support as a neighborhood, or they received all the waivers that they required to make the special permit or the original project to work. So there was a benefit to these developers. So I would hope that you would keep that in mind as you look at this piece of land. The assessors seem to have agreed with me because they've never assessed this 5.5 acre piece for more than $70,000. And if it were developable for the last 35 years, somebody would have found a way to do it. And it just causes consternation that suddenly, because they are trying to avoid all the zoning issues, we've got somewhat of an albatross in our backyards. So I would hope that we have been consistent and steadfast, and everyone has acceded to our requests, and we would hope you would take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ms. Houlihan?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, my comment is really to the public. So one, thank you for coming, because I think your voice is really important here. Two, I just want to make two points. One is that the planning board has limited authority. So we obviously will cover our plan and what we think is right. But we have limited authority, and the Zoning Board of Appeals is where this will be heard if it gets to that point. So that's one thing I just want to be clear, that there is an avenue that way. The second thing that I wanted to say is that your voice does matter. I can't say it doesn't make any difference for mass housing, but I think as important as it is for us to incorporate your feedback, it's also very important for you to voice your feedback in your own letters to the Mass Housing Board, and I'd also copy the Select Board and Planning Board. But I'd encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Ms. Braccio?
Thank you. I second what Marnie said. I actually have a technical question before we get to the comment phase from this board. And again, I haven't been on the board long enough. You could probably answer this for me very easily. But as I move forward with my thought process, is it normal, or have you ever seen access through a parking lot going into a development? Is that something that is common in Southborough that we do? Or, again, as I'm forming my thoughts, this was one of the things that stands out, and I'd like to know if there's an answer before I voice it further down the road.
Not common. I don't know of it anywhere. And our code wouldn't allow
This is on
traffic
250,
through. Yeah.
Lisa?
Yes. There's a proposed 26 or 28-foot access easement. That's how they get to Route 9, is through the parking lot.
Yeah, they're proposing a similar thing on 120 through the parking lot, past two buildings, and then into the back.
Okay, so it's I guess that answers my question.
So we did pose that question to town council in an email. I had asked, does a 40B project require its driveway access to be on the property of the 40B? And some of the comments back were, the access issue is not a particular concern, as Chapter 40B glosses over concerns there. That said, review of the adequacy of access is certainly likely to be a component of the 40B hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Just one more comment. I can't help myself. I'm sorry. Is just around the impact on Route 9, too, we all know if you try to work in Boston or Cambridge, it's impossible. It's getting worse. My guess is that there's got to be some implications to the state will get involved with the commentary with egress, and it's not as severe as the whole on-ramp situation with 495, but it will have implications on Route 9 heading east. So my guess is that there will be some sort of state involvement with that.
Well, we have to be realistic. I mean, they approved Park Central with,
The state did not. They
The
did not
state-
allow egress out onto Route
they
9.
approved egress onto Flag, which is worse, or
They-
arguably.
They didn't. The Park Central was denied in court.
Not by the mass housing, though. My point is, as far
Mass
as
housing doesn't make a difference, right?
That's what my point was.
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating for that, so.
Yes, sir.
Hey, just a point of clarification, John Palmer again. So we do plan on submitting our concerns and issues with this proposed development to Mass Housing, formally to Mass Housing and to Planning Board and Select Board. But just a clarification on process. So does the Planning Board, does the Select Board provide written comments and input and raise concerns with the proposed development to Mass Housing themselves? And
Yes.
when would you do that?
We have to by the 18th at this phase. And then through the ZBA process, we will offer comments and input.
So then you do have a way of providing public comments back through your own feedback. Okay, very good.
Yeah, I would just say that August 18th is the date, so that's the date that they've provided to this town. So a town administrator will orchestrate that, usually as one submission. So that's what happens from this perspective. And then Mass Housing has 30 to 60. They're taking longer, so it could be 90 days before they will generally approve it. I'm just going to be very honest with you. And then it'll come back to when they file it for the ZBA to be heard.
Comments are actually due to the town administrator's office a few days before the 18th. There's a, for them to culminate all.
Anything else? Anyone else? Thank you all very much. I took notes, and I'll be looking for these things on my walk tomorrow with my boots on and my mosquito netting.
It's 5 and 7 are the access points. If you were to ever go through Sarsonstone, it's the yards 5 and 7.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item, 16 East Main Street, minor site plan approval.
Okay. Mike?
Yep.
Hartnett is here, and Ron Eppen, I'm sorry, Ron Eppen, who are two of there are 4 owners for the preschool. All right, let me give you a quick update. So July 10th, we received a submission for minor site plan. The minor site plan is required because there's a change of use from a single-family house that is located at 16 East Main Street, which Mike Hartnett and his team are proposing to turn the first floor into a preschool. So they've been to the Zoning Board of Appeals and have gotten their permit for that use in that zone. That submission was filed with the town clerk and submitted to the town departments. We did not receive any comments back other than from the building commissioner, who indicated he agreed with the 2 parking spaces that are required, with one being a van accessible space. So I will let Mike explain his proposal.
Sure. Mike Hartnett, 20 General Henry Knox Road, here with Ron Eppen from One Overlook Drive, also my wife Gretchen Hartnett, and Laura Eppen from Overlook Drive also, the 4 owners of...
You might just want to speak up and just a little louder, because they have to hear it.
Yep, we are the 4 owners of NSVPI Realty, which is New Southborough Village Preschool Incorporated Realty. We purchased this property back in October. It wasn't planned, but it came up and we took advantage of it. We looked at it as a potential for some overflow, or for creation of 1 preschool classroom. So we went through the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they had approved the change of use from residential to kindergarten, preschool, nursery, which it will be, with the condition that it be just one classroom, maximum 2 teachers in the 1 space. The follow-up to that is that it does need the site plan approval, minor site plan approval, which is why we're here today. The parcel itself, really the only changes we're making on the parcel are those that we're basically required to make. We're required to add a parking space that is at least 30 feet back from the front property line, so that it's outside of the front setback. There's limited space to do that based on the geometry of the property. There's an existing driveway, and then the garage and the main building are about 36 feet off the front of the property line. So in order to get that parking space more than 30 feet off the front property line, the only space we could come up with, and we did talk to the building commissioner about this, is that spot just to the east of the existing garage. So we are proposing the parking spot there. The second spot would be the van accessible spot, which is the one shown in the existing driveway. We will be paving a small area to the east, to the west of it, which you can see hatched out there on that plan. And that's for the required walkway that goes with the parking spot. So working with the building commissioner, he's confirmed with the emails we submitted that the ADA accessible features can be within that area. They are, exempt from the setbacks. So that gives us the 2 required parking spots that we have. The other change to the exterior, which is the more visible change, will be that there has to be ADA accessible access. The existing building had the back porch ripped off, so there was nothing back there when we purchased it. So that'll get replaced, so there's egress in the back. And then from there will be an ADA accessible ramp, which will come down on the west side of the property. And then from the bottom of the ramp, we have to have a continuous access to meet the driveway. So there is a town sidewalk there, which the town just repaved first this week, I believe. So the ramp and then that walkway, which comes from the ramp to the sidewalk, is to satisfy the ADA access. And then the existing town, sidewalk is what connects us to the parking. So those are the exterior changes to the property. We did go through with the building commissioner, with the zoning board. We have been talking with town planner and also with the assessor's office to kind of make sure we got everybody's concerns before we came in here so that we could address them all. But I'll do a quick run through of just what's required by the regulation and some of the things we did talk about coming into this and how we put it onto the plan. Property location, 16 East Main Street. It was a residential property with 2 buildings on it, main house and a garage. Both of those structures are going to stay basically the same. We are redoing the exterior. The house was in need of some significant maintenance. Like I said, there was some exterior damage to it. The roof was leaking. So we've put a new roof on, and we've gotten permission to do the exterior so far, which is what we're doing now. The interior changes, the ramp, the driveway, those things are contingent on site plan approval. So hopefully we got everything right going into this, but just kind of skip along. So one of the things the regulations call for is basically keeping the character of the property within the town of Southborough, sort of character, assuring safety, promoting logic, imagination, innovation, while complying with all zoning requirements. So again, this was originally a zone residence C years ago, so it is a smaller lot, and as part of the ZBA approval, we did get ZBA approval for non-conforming frontage and area. So that was part of the ZBA approval. The property itself, like we said, when you look at it when it's finished, except for the changes that were required to make for the parking and the ADA access, will essentially look like the same property. Just kind of cleaned up with new siding, new windows, and kind of, taking care of some of the maintenance issues. We kind of felt that that was a better look, just to kind of keep it in looking with the neighborhood. I should mention that the property immediately to the west of it is a business. It is the Southborough Village Preschool. So it does abut a business on one side, which is also a property that we own. So none of the setbacks are being impacted on the property with the exception of the ADA ramp. And that is, according to the building commissioner, exempt at this point. The existing and proposed parking, we did go through with the commissioner, met with him, and he has provided information that the parking we show meets his requirements. The driveway opening will not change. The driveway opening is set by a utility pole that's in the sidewalk, so we can't go any bigger. And there is a stone wall on the utility pole on the east side, stone wall on the west side. So except for the paved area that we're going to just widen out a little bit for the walkway from the handicap van accessible spot to the sidewalk, the driveway opening stays essentially the same. None of the property lines change. There is a right-of-way on the east side, but we do not have legal access to that we know of. So our only access is the actual front of the property on East Main Street. One thing that we are not proposing on this, though, is landscaping. We did meet with our licensor at the Department of Early Education and Care. Like I said, we own the preschool next door, so we work with her closely. They do not want landscaping because you have to keep the kids in sight during drop-off pickup. You have to be able to see them if they're out in the yard. So part of our licensing would be to minimize or keep the landscaping down. The property right now is not landscaped. There's one rhododendron on the property. Other than that, it's just lawn and some kind of wild maple trees that are starting to grow up, just for lack of maintenance. But our intention is not even to cut the trees. We talked to the ZBA about doing some trimming back because they hang on top of the roof and they hang on top of the garage, and we just need to kind of clean that up a little bit. But other than that, with the rhododendron, the one rhododendron will be removed because it's in the way of the ramp. And other than that, the rest of the property is just lawn. Existing and proposed signs, we're not proposing any freestanding signs. The only sign that will be on the property will be the number plate by the door, which will just be the number, and it'll probably have just a designation of something small, SVP, or just so people recognize that is, when they do look at the number, what's there. Surfacing, we are proposing that the surfacing of the extra parking spot is paved, as is the widening on the driveway and the walkway from the handicap ramp to the sidewalk. The decking will be like a Trex decking for the surfacing on the decking, typical type decking. No wetlands were noted on the property or abutting the property. None are shown on the plans. So no wetlands are being impacted. The method of sewage disposal, we have a septic system that's not new, but it's not old. It's been replaced. We had a Title V inspection done, and we did get confirmation from the Board of Health as part of your package there that it is suitable for the use on the property. And then the water supply is just the town water that comes into the property now. We'll be using the same water service with no changes. And then there was some other information that was requested just to have on the plans and be included, which was the zoning data, which is on there, the abutter information, parking requirement calculation information is on there, map and parcel numbers, including an existing condition plan. And the existing condition plan, just to make note, There are two parcels here. It's map 55, lots 14 and 14A. Mass General law states that when you have two parcels that have been common ownership, I believe for 7 years, they become one parcel. So legally, we're told they're one parcel, but the assessor's office still has them listed as two. So when we talked to the various boards, they said to present it the way we presented it so that there were no questions as to what the status of it was. And that because it will continue to be in common ownership, it will eventually, with the assessor's office, be listed as one parcel. The parcel in the back, which is 14A, we don't propose to touch that at all as part of this. All of the impacts to the parcel are just those that we noted on the front. We did include a copy of the septic plan. We did include confirmation from the building commissioner on the ADA accessible features being allowed within the setback area, as well as the parking. We included identifying information from the ZBA, and I think we included the ZBA decision as part of this as well, so you can read through it. Yeah, and that's kind of it in a nutshell. I could give you more of a history about how we got here if you want it with the preschool. I'm not sure it's relevant, but I'm happy to run you all through it if you'd like.
You did have the engineer look at the stormwater management for the
Yes.
small amount of paving.
Yes,
And
and
they
he
did
did,
note
he
it.
noted it on, so noted on the plan is the engineer's note that the amount of impervious surface area being added was so small that he was not recommending any drainage work at all.
Very good. Thank you very much. In the interest of full disclosure, both of my children, who are 27 and 30 now, attended Southborough Village Preschool, so I don't think I have a conflict. Mr. Stein?
So you say that the landscaping is minimal. Are you going to be paving over anything, or?
No, so between the existing driveway and the wall, which is that kind of hatched out area on the west side of the driveway, which is going to be it's kind of a required walkway you have to have from the van accessible parking area out to the sidewalk. That right now, it's been used as driveway, it's just not paved. So it's just kind of I guess for lack of a better term, kind of a mud patch. Yeah. And then the area to the right of the garage, which is the east of the garage, is those kind of wild maples, I guess, had just covered it over, and it's just right now it's just a pile of leaves on the side of the garage. We're not cutting any bushes or trees, with the exception of the one rhododendron, which is in the way of the ramp.
And not paving over any of the existing lawn?
No, well, there is so the ramp that comes down, the actual ramp itself will terminate near the front of the house on that southwest quadrant there. And then from the bottom of the ramp to get to the sidewalk needs to be an ADA accessible walkway. So there is a walkway going across the lawn there. Yeah.
But other than that?
Other than that, no.
And are you going to, make any structures or?
No.
Okay. Meaning like a slide?
No, there won't be any.
No.
Because it's the toddlers, they don't have.
Yeah, toddlers aren't allowed to be up off the ground because of the fall hazard, so there would be toys out back on the grass in some areas.
Not yet.
It would be fenced in out back, or?
Yeah, once we get to the licensing with the state, with the Department of Early Education and Care, we'll have a few more requirements just about safety with the kids. It'll pop up as part of the licensing.
So, one of the ZBA members voiced some traffic concerns.
Yes.
I mean, how many toddlers are we talking about as
9.
far as?
9, maximum of 9 at one time.
9. So you could have 9, what time is drop-off?
Is 8:40?
8:45.
8:45.
We give them a 15-minute window, though, for drop-off, and encourage people to use that time, so everybody's not showing up right at once. But it's 9 more children.
To be honest, if we didn't have the van accessible parking space, that spot held 5 cars, which we lose because of the van accessible parking space.
You're staggering the drop-off time, right?
Yes.
So the preschool, the toddler class will come.
I think you need to.
You're going to need a microphone.
Again, so with the property next door, which is the preschool, I should say, it's been there in full operation since 1960. Always a preschool, built as a preschool, and it's always operated as the same number of kids since 1960. We stagger the drop-off time at this property next door to be earlier than that, just so that the cars aren't there at the same
And
time.
how many kids are at the,
94 are in the other school.
there's
But it's
94?
94.
time,
yeah.
there are only 39 at the school.
Oh, at one, I'm sorry, yeah, not 94 enrolled, 39 at one time, I'm sorry.
So there's 39, you're adding 9, and the drop-off is staggered
Yes.
away from the other 39.
Right. So this drop-off here is earlier than the drop-off next door.
Okay.
And then the same thing, these
Okay.
kids are only in here for 3 hours a day. Right now, it's 9 to 12. They did give us 9 to 3:30 as hours with the ZBA. The classroom that's there is only there from 9 to 12, or 8:40 to 11:40. So those kids then get picked up when there's no other cars at the other school as well.
Okay. Thanks for your patience.
No, just happy to be here. Thanks.
Ms. Houlihan.
So I first want to say thank you for your patience as well. I'm sorry that got juggled. The second thing is this is the most thorough minor site plan submission in the fact that you've hit and crossed every T and dotted every I, at least from my perspective. I'm not the town planner, but you've obviously worked with people along the way, and that's very much appreciated. So thank you for coming prepared, and I have no questions.
If we did it, it would have been in crayon.
That would have been more fun. Ms. DeMaria.
Well, I did get to speak with the ZBA member who had a concern when it was before them a while back, and I think was she recommending a traffic study for you, or? I'm trying to understand her concerns is all, just a little bit more.
I think one of the things that came up was when people look at the property and they see the plan with the right-of-way, there was a lot of discussion about whether or not we could put parking in the back. And if we could, we would consider it, but we don't actually at this point have legal rights to the right-of-way. It's not ours, and there's nothing that gives us rights to it. So it could be something to consider in the future if we do get rights to the right-of-way, but it wasn't something we could present that way at this time. And that kept come up over and over, yeah.
To clarify, we think we do have a right to that right of way through use, through established open use, and then certainly.
Yeah. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Uh,
But that was
Just-
the gist of it, was when people
Yeah.
looked at it on a plan, they kept saying, well, why don't you go up the right-of-way and create a parking area back there? And to be honest with you, the people that owned that house before us used to park cars back there. So I think people in the neighborhood had seen that, and it was in their head.
Yeah, we think we do have the right to use it just through established use over the course of the 100 years that that's been there, but it is not deeded. It's not a deeded access right. So push comes to shove, we might be able to make a legal claim that we have the right to use that road, but we don't need to right now, we don't think.
Is that access to a house back there? Is that what that right-of-way is?
Two houses.
Two houses.
Yeah, there's one that actually has frontage on that access road, and then there's another one who's kind of tucked behind 14A parcel as well.
The rear abutter to this parcel is the second parcel, yeah. So if you look at number 18 and number 20, are the two that access their houses off of this right away. It used to go all the way through. When they did the hillside development, they blocked it off, because it used to provide access to the house to the north of hillside.
Illegally blocked it off, we think.
Thank you.
Ms. Braccio.
Thank you for also hanging around. I know it's been kind of a long night. I will say, I'll kind of go along with what Ms. Houlihan said. I mean, I'm fairly new on the planning board, but this was really a complete package, and any questions I had were answered. So very few times in my life, I've actually had nothing to say, but I'll go on record as that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say something? I know I'm only the chair, but I get to talk sometimes, too. So the parking space next to the garage, can that car turn around to get out? So it has to back out onto the street?
unless there's no other cars in the driveway, I would think if it's a small enough car, you might be able to whip it around and go point out, but otherwise, yeah, it's gonna have to back
Technically, no,
out.
though, because if that car even backs up, it has to use the van accessible spot in order to make a turn, so, if there's nobody in that spot, they can do it.
Oh, so if there's no one there, they could
Yeah.
turn in, okay. In the accessible walkway goes up the concrete walkway to the existing porch? Is that how the wheelchair?
Yeah, so basically, if you were to come in a vehicle, you would park in the driveway, the route would be that hatched area down along the driveway, across the public sidewalk, and then back up the walkway that's on the west side of the house. There's a stone wall to the west side of the driveway, which prevents us from being able to meet the grades for any sort of ADA access coming up onto the driveway in that direction.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Stein.
Sorry about that. The motion is to approve the minor site plan for 16 East Main Street preschool.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brascio, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience.
So just so you know, I'll draft a short decision letter that reflects this information of an approval, and we'll file it with the town clerk. And there's a 20-day appeal period, so work you do is at your own risk, but you still have to, the building commissioner probably won't sign off on your building application until after the appeal period. You have to talk to him about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Good luck.
Thank you. Next item. Oh, this isn't late yet. It's still early. Thank you. Good night. Planners report.
All right, let's do this.
Karina, you've done a fabulous job tonight.
Oh, thank you. I'm surprised I could get this far. Okay. So there's no special town meeting coming in the fall, so that's off. The zoning map, I have to do just one last review to make sure the zoning boundaries, I still haven't gotten to that. And once I do that, it should be good to go, and we'll have, I'll confirm once again the process. I believe it comes to the planning board to be accepted, and it gets filed with the town clerk after that. We have this, I think I brought this up before, we have a year-end article disposition, which is the old ZAC leftover money that needs to be used for like services if we need to. So every year I get this, and until we can determine what to do with it and have the bandwidth, I'd like to just continue to roll it over so we don't lose it. So I'll fill this out and submit it to accounting so that we keep this.
And that's for zoning, like zoning articles?
It says here, it has to match the description of what was done before, and it was for consultant team to work with the town to revise the town zoning bylaw and subdivision rules and regulations in order to ensure bylaws and goals and objectives of the master plan. So I think there's some space there for that. Did that. Community Preservation Committee announcement. They're accepting applications for the Community Preservation Act funding for fiscal year 2024. Just so you know that. Nothing new there. Nothing new. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We do have minutes, though.
Mr. Stein?
I'd like to make a motion that the planning board approve the minutes from our June 12th, 2023 meeting.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brascio, yes.
Next.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the June 20, 2023 minutes.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brascio, abstain.
Next.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the June 27th, 2023 minutes.
Second with discussion.
Okay.
I really looked hard for errors on Bridget's minutes, and the only thing I could find is on 194, there was an extra bullet, and it's more just a formatting thing.
194. 190, oh, yeah. Terrible.
Terrible, isn't that terrible?
Missed it. Any other discussion? Seeing none, as amended, all in favor? Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brascio, yes.
And looks like we don't have July 10th for review yet, so we'll just make a motion to approve the minutes from the July 11th, 2023 planning board meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brascio, yes.
Okay.
Next
Great job tonight, Karina.
Oh, thank you. I'm not sweating anymore.
Thank
We'll have to check with Colleen and see if that Jessie Wall was a setup, so we would miss her.
Interesting theory.
I'll let IT know tomorrow, because that was like,
Yeah,
I thought it was like just a slip.
that was bad.
And then he, that was terrible.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brascio, yes.
Yeah, that's the first.